All right. Good afternoon. I'm officially calling to order the New Shoreham Planning Board meeting for Wednesday, May 8th, 2024. Number one on the agenda is amendments to the land development and subdivision regulations for compliance with state law. We're going to review draft amendments. And I'll start with Allison Ring, our town planner, to give us a little background, and then we'll be consulting with some of the lawyers who are specializing in this.
Okay, so the planning board at last month's meeting, we started discussing the development plan review amendments required. This is part of the ongoing amendments to address the state law changes from last legislative session. So development plan review, you have two documents tonight. This is just for discussion. We'll have the planning board will hold a public hearing on these, but the change in definition to development plan review and the types of projects and as we discussed at last month's meeting, wanting to separate the development plan review requirement for every special use permit. So kind of discuss the reasons for that. So throughout the current zoning ordinance, you'll see that DPR is kind of tied in throughout there. So Ashley has gone through the zoning ordinance and compiled those sections for us to start kind of seeing all the different changes that would need to be made to implement that policy change. So Ashley's here on Zoom tonight. So if Ashley, you're available now to kind of walk the planning board through those changes and see if they have any questions.
Sure. So I'll ask if you'd like to walk through the draft of the development plan review first, or if you want to talk through the zoning sections and kind of the policy of how we'd need to make changes to kind of separate special use permits and development plan review, as they're very much intertwined right now.
We'll go through this, I guess, the subdivision language first.
Okay.
That's more straightforward, maybe, or
sure.
Yeah, more state language. Okay.
All right. So the draft you have in front of you would amend your subdivision regulations. The first, starting in Article 2 with definitions, we added development plan review definition in there. And then in your section on that addresses changes to approved plans and plats, we're just adding language in here that makes sure that addresses development plan review applications. And then we also make a change to that section that defines what qualifies as a minor change and what qualifies as a major change. The law, and this is not a new requirement, but the law says that the local regulations will make the distinction between what qualifies for each of those processes, because you have to go through a different process for a minor change versus a major change. Minor changes can be done administratively. Major changes have to be done in a more formal review process. So we've outlined those here. These are not set by state law, so you can change what these thresholds are. We've put these in here based on suggestions, based on what we have seen in other subdivision regulations, but you can modify these as you determine acceptable for New Shoreham. And then under Article 11, we would be adding development plan review. And so we've added the state's definition of what development plan review is. So it can be any one of these items. And then we've also pulled in what you have defined as development plan review, starting under that number 7. And so we've tried to retain what you were using development plan review in there for. And there is some discussion about whether you can deviate from what's in the state's definition and go outside of that, we'll see if the state makes any changes to the way that they're using or the way that they've just changed development plan review, as we go through this next set of legislative changes that are coming for 2024. But we've basically just, like I said, used the state definition and then tried to pull in the pieces that you have in your current use of development plan review. And then we've added under B, applications that are also applying for development plan review and would also be applying for a variance or a special use permit, which would trigger the unified development review process, or which would trigger a modification. And so that's covered under B. And then under C, we just make a distinction between the two different types of development plan review, administrative and formal. And we make it clear that the planning board is the permitting authority under formal, and that the administrative officer is the permitting authority for administrative DPR. And then we lay out the stages of review for administrative, which is really just one stage of review. And then under formal, there are two stages of review, preliminary and final, which essentially mirrors the minor subdivision and minor land development stages of review. And so those are laid out here under D2. Under E, we provide the provisions for the certification of a development plan review application by the administrative officer. And then under F, we provide the provisions for the review and decision on both an administrative and a formal development plan review application. There's an item under 2D for waiver requests. So we've covered that under this section. And then we've brought in your general standards for development plan review that lived in your zoning ordinance and pulled those into your subdivision regulations. So all of the standards that you previously had in your zoning ordinance for decision making on a development plan review application are now in your subdivision regulations. And on the other document that we provided, I kind of gave you a key that shows you when we took those general standards, where we actually put them into your subdivision regulations, so that you can see that we've moved all of those pieces over into your subdivision regulations, and all of those requirements that were in your zoning ordinance for development plan review are not lost, they're just moved. So we've showed you where we've moved them into your subdivision regulations.
Okay.
And that's really a kind of a general overview of how we've constructed development plan review in your subdivision regulations. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Okay. Okay, anybody got questions? I don't think we have any questions. Okay, no, nope. I think you totally overwhelmed us. So no, we do not have any questions.
Understandably so. If you come up with things, we're certainly happy to, to answer emails or other questions that you want to funnel through the planning department. We, please don't hesitate to follow up, and we can get you answers to any questions that come to you after the fact. I know it's a lot of information and it's technical, so.
Yes. As long as Allison and Jen are happy, and I'm quite pleased that you moved the standards and so forth into here so that we don't have to go hunting for them. So thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you want to the other document,
Yep.
the zoning section.
So, yep. So what we did was we did a global search in your zoning ordinance for the words development plan review. That was a frightening result of lots and lots of responses to how many times development plan review popped up. So every time development plan review came up, we looked at how it was used, and everywhere that it came up as a reference to it being the necessary process, we took a kind of a critical look at how it was being referenced and whether it made sense to stay there, or if we were going to potentially need to change it, or if it needed to at least be discussed in how we are going to keep using development plan review in New Shoreham. And so what we did was kind of drop it into this document section by section. And then I put some notes in here as we went through and thought about how it was being applied. And so the basic overall structure of how you use development, or how it seems like you're using development plan review, is that zone by zone, you are laying out where development plan review gets triggered. And so that gets a little tricky, because we can't just make one single change to development plan review to be consistent with the state law. We have to go into every time you've applied it in a zoning district to be consistent and to be in conformance with the law. We have to go in every time. So in every zoning district, we have to make sure that we're making it consistent with the way we're designing it in your subdivision regulations and the way that the state law has kind of changed the use of development plan review. So the first reference in here is what seems to be a reference to sending you to development plan review for making a change to a plan. It may be that I'm misreading that, but we did call that out and wanted to bring that to your attention. That should not be the mechanism for making a change to a plan. So, and again, we can discuss these. I can go over these with staff and we can kind of talk through some of them and come up with some suggestions and then bring those to you. But we just wanted to highlight these for you and at least begin the discussion on some, moving forward, how the town wants to address development plan review. Because as I said, it shows up in every single time you guys call out a zoning district, it pops up. So again, here, in a public utility zone, it calls out that development plan review is the mechanism for reviewing applications. And then I think it's a little bit unclear because of the way things are worded here, whether it's a function of the actual zoning district or the use itself. Because often it seems that development plan review is tied to the requirement for a special use permit. And when you have development, when you have a type of use that requires development plan review that also requires a special use permit, you're going to be the permitting authority anyway for that special use permit. So because of unified development review, it won't happen the same way that it used to happen, where the zoning board is the issuing authority for that special use permit and you're the issuing authority for that development plan review application. Unified development review consolidates those two permits into your authority. So we should consider that anything that would go through development plan review that requires that special use permit anyway is going to come before you. And so it's not going to be this bifurcated process anymore. It's going to sit in front of you. So we need to go through here and clean up this language where it talks about the planning board giving an advisory opinion to the zoning board on the granting of the special use permit, because the way that you have this structured in your zoning ordinance is that every time there's a use that requires a special use permit, you trigger development plan review, which is a little bit backwards and won't work under unified development review. So we need to give that some thought from a structural perspective. I won't go through every single one of these zones because it is pretty much repetitive that each time you come to either a zone or a specific type of use, like secondary dwelling development, it calls out that the use requires a special use permit and therefore needs to go through development plan review. And again, that is now those two things automatically go together to the planning board. So again, we need to kind of think about how you want to structure that type of review process.
Okay, well, I'll work with Ashley on kind of coming up with some language to some of these for the second document, addressing those changes that need to be made, but and we'll have this on another agenda. I know the planning board has a long agenda of applications this evening, but we wanted to at least present where we are with development plan review, and if you have any, questions at this time or direction at this time, certainly share it or email us after.
And I know it's a lot, but I don't know if there are specific things that you're concerned with or want to try to, about the process that you have now that you want to try to retain, or if there are certain outcomes that you're specifically concerned with, I would certainly ask that you let us know so that as Allison and I try to construct a process that meets the state law, we can keep those things at the top, of the list.
Yeah,
Sure.
you can email me. I don't see anybody having any questions or comments at the present time, but we could definitely email. And if I think having you staff put together some options for us to look at would probably make it a lot easier than us trying to sit here and come up with some stuff right now, particularly since we have a rather long agenda. So I think we can look at this again to put on the agenda for June or July, depending on when you're ready for it, probably June.
Well,
Okay, that's a good idea.
yeah,
We'll do it for the special meeting.
and we'll have, hopefully the language that's going to be ready for, because we do need to
Okay.
adopt something as the applications are coming in. We want to make sure this has been addressed.
Okay,
Sooner the
make that a
better.
priority. Great idea. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Can
you,
I
Ashley.
ask-
We'll email you.
yeah.
Yep, okay, go
Can
ahead.
I just ask when you're putting it back on your agenda, just so I can.
The planning board's considering a special meeting coming up in May to handle some of the zoning items that,
Okay.
it's hard to get to with
We are not gonna
applications
get
on the
to tonight.
agenda. Yeah, so we're not gonna get to everything tonight.
We're
So
looking either at May 16th or May 20th.
it'd be possibly a date. It could be a noon meeting or 3 or 4 o'clock. We haven't,
Okay, Allison, we can connect. You can let me know and you and I can work something out.
Oh, Jen's mentioning now if you do have, because they'll probably decide tonight on that meeting. Do you have a conflict May 16th or May 20th?
I don't,
May 16th, May 16th, either at noon or at 3 or 4, or May 20th at noon.
so I can do both of those during the day.
Yeah, these
Yes.
are all during the day.
Yep, I can do both of those.
Okay. Good, then we will look forward to getting together with you very shortly, and Allison will be in touch to let you know what the date is that we end up selecting.
Okay, great.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye.
Good to see you. Okay, we're numbers 2 through 6 are all tied into the Eureka Hotel. We were doing this under the new plan whereby it's a unified, as we were talking about with Ashley. So we will have a stenographer with us today. Welcome. Glad to have you. We will go through and introduce ourselves so everybody will know who we are. And then second of all, because it is a, with the stenographer, slightly more formal meeting than we normally run with a planning board, because mostly we're advisory. I will first of all take questions and comments from my board, and then I will take questions and comments from the audience. I ask that all of your questions be directed through me rather than the give and take back and forth, which we sometimes have allowed. So any questions before we start? Okay. Yes, that would be good. Okay, I'm Margaret Cummings and I'm chair. Claire? Claire Cummings.
Mary Anderson.
Christopher Willie.
All right, number 2.
Gail's recused.
Yes,
Gail
Gail is
is
recused because she has conflict. Number 2, the Eureka Hotel and Garden Lot. Public hearing for a United Development Review for an application for administrative subdivision to reconfigure lots 33, 36, 37, 38 on High Street and Spring Street. Okay.
Hello, Seth Draper on behalf of the Draper family.
Karen, do you want to swear?
Hi. Could you raise your right hand? Could you state your name for the record?
Seth Draper.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth during the course of this hearing?
I do.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Dylan Conley on behalf of the applicant. I have with me today Julissa Arce. She's an associate in my law firm. She's going to help me with some of the materials. And I also have Ed Pimentel. He is our land use expert. I think just in terms of dissemination of material, I'll start with it's a printout of a PowerPoint, which is going to be how I'm going to kind of discuss each of the items as we go through them. So it's just a bit organized. And then I did, we've been working with the town on this application since summer of 23. And recently we've really been drilling down and some of the questions and materials that they've requested. I'm trying my best to produce some additional clarity, but some of this handwritten, but I'll walk you through that when we get to the surveys. I think it's going to help us a bit in particular with the boundary line. So I'm gonna steal this chair. Is that everything? Yeah, can we hand out those two? Yeah.
Thank you.
Except for the ones, there's one set of docs I want to hang on to. There's a series of motions. Okay. So this is the 1661 Farm and Gardens. You take a look at the survey you have in front of you. That's got my lovely handwriting in red with blue highlight. So what I've done is I've annotated existing conditions so that there's a little bit of additional clarity when we talk about this as a complex. The current definition of a hotel in New Shoreham includes the phrase complex. We thought in order to give the most fair and accurate description of what we consider to be a part of these properties, although not every parcel is subject to the applications you have before you, in context, we think it's a bit clearer. So it's the 1661, which is across the street. For whatever reason, for me, it helps me if I look at it kind of north-south, up and down like this. This is the garden lot, which is sort of the main little tier here. There's an existing farmhouse here, the Eureka, the Dodge House, those two properties here. The Draper family also owns the Kittleton?
Kitterman House.
Kitterman.
Kitterman House. Found his house on High Street, they know, of, and also.
Dean Button.
And they've recently acquired this, the Campbell property. So when we talk about the hotel as a complex, we're talking about all of these properties all being rolled within the same management. So what we're specifically looking for from this board through Unified Development Review is an administrative subdivision, which contemplates each of the properties. The purpose of the subdivision is to meet the standards set forth as a hotel within the code. And basically to cure a whole bunch of present dimensional nonconformities. So we are bringing all of the property into compliance with zoning code. We're not creating any new lots. We're just moving the lots around, the lot lines around, so that we can cure all of the existing dimensional nonconformities. So in Unified Development Review, sort of step one will be the zoning consideration. Step two will be the planning consideration, which will be the subdivision. As I slowly move through my printed PowerPoint, the UDR process will be the proposal that you have in front of you is for the renovation of existing buildings. I think it's important that we understand that all of the we're not building any new buildings. I think that that's important for understanding any potential changes to the property. There are no new buildings. The Eureka Hotel, we're seeking a special use permit to continue its use as a hotel. There'll be 3 suites, 23 hotel rooms. The Dodge House, again, existing largely as a hotel. A lot of these properties have been intermittently used as employee and staff housing or rented out over time. They are rented to employees, just a little bit of a different relationship than open to the general public. And then the Mill Building, we're seeking to convert from light industry to 11 units. Now, the real driver for the hotel application and the 11 units at the Mill Building is eligibility for the restaurant. The real driver for the eligibility for the restaurant is the desire to build a farm stand. Farm stand doesn't really exist in New Shoreham code. The closest thing that we thought we could find to it was a restaurant. We don't think that that's really that applicable. We do actually think a farm stand is more akin to a farming use than it is a restaurant use. I can dive into that a bit more later on. I just read an objection from a member of the public, and I think there's some things that we can do to kind of meet that objection and that concern. So to be clear, when it comes to the garden lot, we're seeking the hotel to support a farm stand. And the only way we thought to get to that was with restaurants, but we may have an alternative path that works better for everyone else.
Again, I just want to
Sure.
let you know that your memo dated or your email dated May 7th was distributed to the planning board. So where you're outlining some changes that you could potentially make, just so that you know that they have that.
Thank you. As we continue to move through, one of the interesting things about the hotel definition is it specifically contemplates a complex. So I think what Jen was just bringing our attention to is we can, in my eyes, consider all of this as a complex and pursue the hotel for each. And then that's how we get to the farm stand. But if this board would prefer, we could decrease the unit density at the Dodge House and at the Mill Building if we are able to determine that a farm stand is more similar to a farming use than it is a restaurant use. And then it would be 2 inns and no restaurant. It would be 2 inns and a farm stand. The Eureka is a hotel through and through. There's kind of, that one's not complicated at all. But we can decrease the density at both the Dodge site and the Mill site and withdraw essentially the restaurant application for the special use permit if this board finds that it's more akin to a farming use, specifically the farm stand. One of the other components of the hotel definition And the in definition is there's two different standards relative to a renovation versus a new build. We are not building anything new. So we'd be seeking relief. This board can exempt us from prohibitions from having kitchens in units. That there are a few suites that we intend to use largely for employee housing. We can remove the stove and make it so that it's not a kitchen, but we would like to keep the stoves. It's just sort of an amenity in the Eureka, which is important to us. And then the room sizes, the standard for a new build is 240 square feet, not including bathrooms, but including closets. These existing buildings, we're trying to kind of maintain the floor plan as they exist. So we're asking that this board exempt us from that standard relative to the Eureka. That is relevant at the mill site if the mill is going to be a hotel. If this board prefers that we decrease the unit count, and I do have a plan set that shows the mill building at 9 units, that does not apply in the same way. So sort of an option to decrease the performance requirements because an inn is a much less intense use than a hotel. If you look at section 407, this is on page 3 of my PowerPoint. I'm kind of sliding through here. These are the specific and objective standards related to the issuance of a hotel permit. I have a little chart. The Eureka, we're requesting that this board exempt us from having to remove the kitchen from those units, and that we're able to keep the room sizes sort of as they currently flow and as they've been submitted. The Dodge House, similarly, we're looking for the same types of relief. That relief would not apply if it shifted to an inn as opposed to a hotel, which we would not object to. The same thing with the garden lot and the mill building. So when I'm talking about the difference between the farm stand and the restaurant, the state law that's directly on point is 45-24-42-B1. This is a new law that became in effect January 1st, and it allows applicants to submit an application to a board and say, you know, we don't think that the farm stand is really defined within New Shoreham Code. We're asking you to determine what its use is most similar to. Through the Right to Farm Act, which I think is a really interesting area of Rhode Island law, there's a lot of support given to agricultural uses, generally speaking. But it doesn't exempt agricultural uses from planning and zoning. So the case law on it is clear that there's sort of a policy impetus to support farm uses, but not something that you can sidestep the municipality. I think that ties in with this new provision very, very well, because we're essentially asking this board to find that a farm stand is a farming use. And if that's the case, it still is a special use permit because we're requesting that this board make that finding. You would do that through the special use permit, but it wouldn't be a restaurant. And so we could withdraw the hotel application and, well, not literally withdraw the hotel application, but decrease to an inn. And so it's a less intense use. A restaurant use is much more intense than a farm stand use. And I think that's what the neighbors are concerned about. So I think it does allow us to sort of meet the neighbors where they are. I do have it all laid out still as we originally submitted, the specific and objective criteria for the restaurant. There is no specific and objective criteria for a farm stand because it's a use that we're arguing is more similar to farming. When we were in front of this board scheduling the public hearing, one of the concerns was the parking requirements, and we do a separate breakout on the next page. What I've done is taken a snippet from the survey and shown exactly what the parking requirements are for each site and how many parking spaces we're providing. We're going above and beyond all the parking requirements. If you do look back at the survey on the proposed conditions, in light green, you can count the parking spaces. You can also see my wonderful annotations. I've highlighted in yellow the existing property lines and blue the proposed property lines. And then in the red ink is just to kind of bring the concept of the lots into some additional level of clarity. But within this, you can actually see the parking count, which complies with the code as done by the surveyor. And I think there's sort of an open-ended question on my end, where if this board would prefer that we continue exactly as applied as a complex as a whole, with the hotel uses on each site, with the full restaurant, based on the objections, our work with the planning consultant and the legal counsel, we don't have an objection to this board basically reducing the relief that we're requesting, which would pivot the Dodge House from 11 plus units to 10 or fewer. Same with the mill site. And if this board wished to restrict us so that it's not a full restaurant use, but only a farm stand, we don't have an objection to any of that. But the motions would be a little bit different. And I've prepared motions depending on which direction this board may want to go in. I don't want to be presumptive, so I really don't. I would love to hear some feedback on what maybe the preference of the board is so that I can address that approach. Or perhaps I can reserve until after the public hearing to try to address any concerns like that.
I don't know that we have any particular concerns at this point. If anybody has any questions.
I'd just be, I'm sorry. I'd just be curious to know how you're defining a farm stand. Like, I mean, I've seen some stuff in your materials and sort of what does the farm stand look like? Since we don't have a definition in our ordinances, how would you define it? for
Sure.
purposes?
So Seth, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, it's just snacks, grab and go, to sort of enjoy the farm, soda, water, handmade soaps, kind of a limited, almost like a somewhere between a country store, I think brings that concept in, not a farm stand in the sense of there's pumpkins and it's an honor system, pay $5, grab a pumpkin, but within the interior of the lot, there is a store scenario. Seth, do you want to describe it a bit better than me?
Yeah, you're doing pretty well. Basically, I would say the main purpose would be to sell any agriculturally influenced products that we would make on the farm or could add products for someone to make something. Our goal is to have locally made products and with anything that we grow. Now, when we have our lettuce and cucumbers and things that are growing in the season and we're harvesting, we'd like to make salads with that. Now, if we make the salads and sell it, are we providing, the lettuce then becomes from a whole lettuce into a meal. And that's where we got into kind of the tricky scenario where we want to make sure we're covered and we're going the restaurant direction. So it's kind of that. And then if you were to add in, if we were brewing coffee or a beverage of some sort or selling a beverage to go with that salad, that's where it kind of crosses possibly that line of the restaurant versus a farm stand. So it's kind of anywhere from, homemade zucchini bread and jellies and jams to raw produce to, possibly beverages and other items that we would sell to go along with the products.
But no drive-through, no white linen, no.
No indoor seating.
No indoor seating,
No indoor
correct?
seating.
Is this is the location that the food truck was at, right?
The
Close
food
to
truck
it.
is no longer there. It would be in the interior space where the Northlight Fibers yarn retail was.
Okay,
So that would be
so
in.
not down where the like near the parking where the food truck was, but it's up where the north place.
It's close, it's right next to about 50 feet from where the food truck was.
Okay.
It'd be in the building, we call it the studio, which is 160 on the plot map. It's right next to, there's a little pond in the center of this whole map.
Is there, in the Right to Farm, the Decision Act, is there any reference to what they considered a farm stand? I just,
So not expressly what they consider.
I guess where I'm coming from is I feel uncomfortable using a term that we don't have an exact definition for is, I think, where I come down. I'm not against it at all. I just
Yeah.
don't really know.
No, I think it's a good question. What the Right to Farm Act does is it talks about how important it is to sustain farms by allowing them to operate without being shut down for nuisance lawsuits. But it also basically says that ancillary uses are important. So it's been litigated in the past whether or not having a farm guarantees the right to have a wedding. And no, the court said, no, you're still subject to local zoning. The courts do say is that there's a very clear policy purpose from the General Assembly that's basically asking municipalities, look, we really want to respect these farm uses, but it doesn't exempt us. So the biggest difference is we can't just open up this store under the Right to Farm Act. But we're asking you if you would kind of see the farm stand in the same way that I think the General Assembly's purpose for the Right to Farm Act is that we want to come under and abide by local zoning by requesting the special use permit. And you can describe to us what would be appropriate in the location underneath that definition of farm stand.
The regulation is we can describe what you are allowed to do and make a list of what you are not allowed to do.
Yes.
Have you considered amending the zoning ordinance and create this defined use that you're proposing? Because, right, I mean, that seems like this simple path to achieve what you would.
In my experience, amending a zoning ordinance takes 6 to 9 months, and there's absolutely no certainty involved because it's a purely political phenomenon. There's no judicial component to it. So I think the special use permit option under the state law, in which we're describing how our uses are similar to another use, how a farm stand is similar to a farm, is puts us in a situation where we could possibly do it this year instead of next. And there's some level of judicial feasibility to it, where I think the primary distinction between a restaurant and a farm, all of your food comes into a restaurant, right? You're not growing it on site. The things that we're talking about selling that aren't grown on site are ancillary to the things that we are producing on site. So it's the genesis of the fact that we are a farm and that this is to support that I think makes us eligible to apply for the special use permit, basically where the farm stand would be defined as a farming use.
Sounds to me like this is a dedicated location for one shop farmer's market. How would the health department, how's the health department going? If this would, or just, what would the health department consider it?
They would have to do a standard inspection. They do a retail sales permit. So anytime you're selling any produce, any foods, they'll do an inspection to make sure that all of your preparation is healthy, but they don't get into zoning.
Right. I'm saying, does the Department of Health though inspect a farm stand differently than a restaurant?
Oh, they might. I think they would look at it as food prep. And they would just do an analysis of,
Food prep isn't restaurant, is not restaurant.
I think the distinction is because it's the preparation of the food grown on site.
I'm just looking at it as, it's odd that there's not a definition.
Yeah, I agree.
We don't have a definition for dormitory in this town, yet we have.
We have a definition for a restaurant.
Yes.
And we have a definition for retail. So
Right.
I think it's, I think the appropriate path is to amend the zoning ordinance, but.
Or could you present us with a definition? You know, we don't adopt it into the zoning ordinance because I get what you're saying about how long that takes, but you present us with the definition that gets written into the decision.
I wouldn't have an objection to that.
Just so that we all are clear about, I think speaking for myself, this sounds great, but I think to approve something without a definition just doesn't.
Right, because then if it becomes
Nope.
an enforcement issue, then it's kind of all over the place with what they're allowed to do.
Yeah, and I'd like a list of grown on site items plus like water, coffee, or whatever that you're going to
Right,
sell.
you just.
And then a list that says, or a sentence or two that says, you will not be serving full dinners full breakfasts or whatever. So that it's very clear that it's a food stand or a farmer's market. It is not a restaurant.
No objection at all.
So that's, I think we could work with that.
And I think that if you are proposing an amendment to this application and you're proposing inns, you should revise your application so that we're advertising everything correctly going forward.
So I am not withdrawing our current application. We are, if this board wants to restrict and reduce our current proposal to meet all of the issues that we just spoke about, I don't have an objection to that. But we are not withdrawing or amending our present application.
So you would keep the mill building and the Dodge House as hotels. You want to move forward with that even if I just want to be.
It's whichever the board prefers.
I-
If you want to reduce the unit count, we don't have an objection, but we are not amending our application.
I think we're going to want you to work toward an inn because that eliminates some problems that we would have under the hotel, starting with room size, which is very hard to change. But we also want to make sure that we address some of the other issues of kitchens and so forth. So let's not jump too far ahead. I think the first thing I'd like to do is go through number 2, which is to get a administrative subdivision approved. Because if that doesn't go, then the rest of this is something else again.
Sure. So on the front of the administrative subdivision, this is what we would do if these special use permits are approved. We meet all of the dimensional standards associated with it. I can have my land use expert talk in much greater detail based on his report on how we brought additional items into conformities. That Ed?
Dylan, before you step away, this is Karen. I have a quick question for you. At the top of your presentation, you referenced the Rhode Island general law that is new and talks about how uses that are close in nature could be considered under the umbrella of other uses. What was that reference? I had 4524.
B1, 45, 24. B1, I think.
You gonna lean into the mic?
Hi, it's Rhode Island General Laws, 45, 24, 42, Section B1.
Okay, and that was specific to the farm stand.
Correct.
Okay, I think take a look at, so farming is allowed by right. You're in the RCM.
Correct.
Farming is allowed by right. So take a look. I don't know if you actually meant to say 45, 24, 37.
Okay,
Just take a look at that.
I will. Thank you.
Sorry, Ed, could you raise your hand? Could you say your name for the record?
Edward Pimentel, that's P as in Paul, IMENTEL.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth during the course of this hearing?
I do.
Thank you.
So I believe my report is in the record. So for easement, what I did was I consolidated all of our actions pursuant to the administrative subdivision on pages 20 and 21 of my report. Because there's a lot of information here. So the situation is that in our desire to meet, obviously, the client's desires, for what he wants to do to his property, and I utilizing your comprehensive plan as the guide document to what the goals and objectives of this community were. When I started to research this site along with the design team, we found a lot of pre-existing dimensional nonconformities. not only in the lot configuration, but also in the layout of the pre-existing uses that were out there. Some structures, accessory structures were on the properties, although they serve other needs of other. And even though it is true that this operates as a complex, you still should have your parcels and the uses on those parcels comply with the local regulations as to the uses that they serve. So if you follow along, what I broke it down was to all of the dimensional criteria that would be applicable: lot area, developable lot area, all the setbacks, coverages, parking, name it. I covered every single one of your dimensional criteria, broke it out by parcel. The top row tells you what the existing condition was, and the bottom what the proposed condition will be. For example, on page 20 of 32, the first one, we have a non-compliance situation or condition right now with lot 38. Should we be successful with this body, we will render that compliant. And if you go through, all of the dimensional nonconformities are going to be cured except for one, which we could not cure, even though we were able to reduce that, and that was lot frontage associated with lot 36, just because you can only create so much frontage because the properties, the adjacent property also is improved with the use. So you have to consider that parcel too and not render that non-conforming. So we were able to reduce that deficiency. It's a pre-existing condition. And otherwise, we rendered all of the dimensional deficiencies associated with the complex of properties of the Draper family compliant. So that's the first and foremost step that we wanted to accomplish before we moved on to usage of the parcels. I don't know if the board members have any questions.
Questions?
38 is Dodge. Yeah, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
I believe the lot that he was referring to was what we call the farmhouse, which was my grandfather's house, which would be the lot 37.
Lot 36 is the one.
36, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
36 would be the farmhouse.
Oh, not 38.
38 is Dodge House.
So this is before.
Yeah, my apologies, yeah. So each row is broken, right? Each category is broken in top row and bottom row. Existing conditions, post conditions.
Yeah.
36. Great, thank you.
And we, like I said, we
Right.
went through iteration after iteration of these designs. It's obvious this is a uniquely configured complex of parcels, right? It almost looks like a Pac-Man walking if you look at upside down. So as we reconfigured them, we didn't want to create some other dimensional nonconformity, such as you don't meet appropriate frontage, or now you affect coverages on one parcel as you're trying to take care of coverages on the others, or you affect parking on one parcel. And we wanted the uses to be on the parcel that they serve. We had boundary lines going through uses and so forth. I said, this is the opportunity now, because this is really a comprehensive redevelopment of this property. And by the way, and I've got to put this on the record, at first and foremost on our minds is we didn't want to affect the site itself. That's why we're not bringing any new construction. It was all interior. What can we do to keep the character of this property, try to realize economic development in accordance with the regulations, but do so in a manner that realizes greater compliance. So we went through iterations of this to achieve this final proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm happy to rest based on all the documents we've presented, the entirety of the administrative record, testimony of our land use expert. I would like to reserve to be able to respond to questions from the public or any other questions from this
And we'll
board.
see if there's questions from the board. And then, as I said, we will go to questions from the audience
Okay.
just for number 2. I'm not going to try to take everything all at once. So starting for the board, are there questions on the administrative subdivision? Okay, I don't see any. All right, are there questions or comments from the audience on number 2, which has to do with the subdevelopment of the lot lines for an administrative subdivision. All right. Then I will make a motion that we give an approval to view the design developed. And I wanted to give the exact number here, because we've looked at several things. This was the one for December 2023, that's correct? All right, so I make a motion that we approve the administrative subdivision for the Draper property, which was drawn on December 2023. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Okay, further comments or questions? From the board or from the audience? Okay. All right, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, round one. Let's go on to number 3. Talk about that one.
I don't have an agenda in front of me. I apologize. Item 3 is which?
It's not lot 33. Now, just for the record, I'll just read it very quickly. Garden lot, plat 7, lot 33, public hearing for unified development review for an application by the Draper family for a special use permit under 407 hotels to convert the existing mill building previously approved by a special use permit to a hotel. So that's number
So I think
3 rather.
in focusing my general presentation from earlier, in terms of moving forward as the hotel use, we think that the entire site is a portion of a hotel complex. It's underneath the same management, including the 1661 across the street, all of the parcels that were identified herein, recently acquired Campbell property. The main goal of the hotel is really for largely staff housing uses. There's no way underneath New Shoreham code to temporarily house employees through an accessory dwelling unit in this zone. So the hotel application kind of includes both employee uses and other rentals. And the hotel is necessary to support the restaurant special use permit. So if this board wanted to reduce the unit count, we wouldn't have an objection so long as we were still able to go forward with the farm stand. So the process in which you would like to do that, I may suggest that we go out of order off the agenda and hear the restaurant special use permit application first. If the board wishes to do that, I will address the restaurant versus farm stand matter. If not, we would be moving forward with the request for the hotel. And we believe we meet the specific and objective criteria related to that application.
All right, I'm willing to go and look at the farm table one. Which number is that?
Well,
2.
before you do that, Margaret, I just want to point out that the hotel use for this lot. I mean, they
Thank
don't
you.
meet
You don't meet the
numerous,
recommendations.
Zoning standards under 407, so I think that.
I disagree with that contention.
Use for that, and then if we're going to go back to that, just remember the
Jen, could you speak into the mic for me?
that it was close enough.
So
So do you want to jump to the restaurant portion?
I'm happy to go to the restaurant. I do feel that what Jen was saying is correct. You would have a very hard time meeting the definition for a hotel. So I really think you should be looking at a in designation for the mill property.
if we go to the restaurant situation
But
first, we could render it moot.
We can both agree. Okay, but I don't, let's see, that is number
4.
4 on the list here. Okay, So you are recommending, go ahead.
So I think the farm stand use is something that we've been talking about, and legal counsel to the board just accurately pointed out that if it is most similar to a farming use, then it's permitted by right, and it doesn't require a special use permit. If this board finds that a farm stand is most similar to a restaurant, that's slightly different. But if it is most similar to a farming use, and I believe it is because the whole genesis of the products are derived from the farm and the farming, then the farm stand would be a permitted use. We'd be happy to list out exactly what we would be doing. And that would actually be an administrative approval underneath subsection 37 of the Rhode Island General Code, but certainly would have no objection to this board reviewing it.
Since it is, and I hope I speak for the board, since this is something we have not done, I think we would like to review it.
No problem.
Agree.
And if this board is basically in the process of sorting out how we're going to organize the definition of a farm stand such that the uses as described by my client would be permitted on the site. If that is the case, we have no objection to reducing the mill site to an inn, which resolves some of the chair's identified concerns relative to the inn. But I do want to just clarify what those uses are likely to be now and during the public hearing, so that I have an understanding of what the farm stand will look like. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I guess based on the presentation from my client earlier, we would ask to be able to respond to any concerns raised during public comment relative to the farm stand proposal.
So what would you feel that you want from us so that you feel comfortable that we agree with the farm stand?
You know, if we have a discussion about the parameters of what this board feels is a farm stand, and if this board feels that's what's similar to a farming use, I will put that in writing and submit it accordingly. But one of my primary concerns is that if there are objectors here, I want to understand what their concerns are so that we can make sure to mitigate any potential nuisances or harms that they perceive.
Okay, why don't you ask the public if they have any comments on this application? And potentially ask Attorney Conley to craft some language for your review at the next meeting, since we have an extremely long agenda and we're gonna lose Chris in a little while, so.
Okay.
But I think they would like to hear feedback, so if there are, I mean, I know we have had numerous people call the office and ask for plans, and we submitted what we had. So the abutters that have reviewed it have not seen or heard this version.
I know in the one letter that I had a chance to look at from one of the abutters, I was particularly concerned about night sky compliant and screening, vegetation type screening, so that it would cut down on the noise, and it would also visually make it seem a little more rural. I have not been out to look at the site. I don't know whether that's practical or not, but those are the couple of items that were listed
We have,
in one of the letters that came in.
I was able to review the letter upon coming in. Those two conditions we have absolutely no issue with. I think there may have been some other conditions. I don't think we had an objection to any of them, but specifically on the dark sky and the green buffer, we are absolutely intending to do anyway, and
You're
very
not
happy.
proposing any new lighting.
Correct.
anyway, it's all
No,
existing,
I mean-
so, right.
Correct.
Is this, and you are primarily operating in daylight hours, as I understand it,
Correct.
because you're a farm stand. I think what we want in the farm stand, or at least what I'm looking for, is a list of items that you would be selling related to farm products, whether it's food or products such as, for example, wool or soap, candles, things like that is what I'm seeing. Seth, do you agree
Correct.
with that?
Yes, yes.
This is
I
your
would-
business. You tell me what you want.
And Margie, are you asking for them to come back?
I want them to come back, and I'm just giving you a
Language to,
I want you to come back next month. I think that was already understood,
okay.
so that we want to have a chance to look at it. I'd also like perhaps a specific paragraph at the end that lists what would not be sold or allowed to be sold at a farm stand, just so that it is definitely clear that it is not a restaurant.
Understood.
Okay?
Margie,
Yes, go right ahead.
I just want to point out that for all intents and purposes, a restaurant has been there, but it was mobile.
Right, so it was permitted under the,
Okay.
Under the food truck,
right,
yes.
food
Right.
truck license
I
and not
understand.
through zoning, because zoning doesn't allow.
I understand. I'm just want to make
Yeah.
a point that there was already a restaurant there.
Yeah. But again, it
The
was
farm
not,
stand.
technically, it's,
Technically, it's different.
it's different than a restaurant.
It is, and it's
It's not that
permitted in the
different.
state.
That's
All right,
correct.
it's already permitted in the state. We just haven't encountered it here. You can do it.
Well, we do have farm stands.
You can permit it in other towns
Mhm.
and their definitions are. you just
Right, but
wanna-
the farm stands that we do have, they're selling like their tomatoes, their
Right.
corn. I mean, they're not preparing
There's nothing prepared.
food.
That's where
There's not, it's
you're
not
going to be different.
preparation for,
So that's what
or-
you need to include.
or retail.
I
Which I think
understand
is a
all
great
of-
idea. You make the bread and you have the lettuce, tomato and so forth and some cheese and you're putting together a sandwich. That's great. I think that's a wonderful idea. Let's write the
Right.
definition so that that could be included.
But the component that you have to, I think, at the end of the day, the Department of Health
Correct.
is like.
We have inspections in all of our
Right.
establishments and we would continue, they would be inspecting this establishment from the beginning and throughout any service of any products that are consumed, even if it's a zucchini bread wrapped. That also, depending on the level of inspection would depend on what we're serving. If it's more prepared meals, like a sandwich of that nature, then it's usually inspected at the kitchen facility, but there is also more of a, I think it's called a homesteader type licensing, which you could actively create goods within your residential home, but still needs inspection from the health department.
Right, isn't it a farm kitchen?
Farm
In
kitchen
Rhode
and
Island, you can
homestead
sell
kitchen.
things you make in your house.
Right.
I don't know how it is. in other
So
places,
that,
but
but we would be looking to, because we're in the restaurant and hotel business already, we would be looking to make sure we covered our bases and having the full inspection of any of our facilities at all times.
And this definition or this use
Mhm.
ultimately affects what happens at the mill building.
Exactly.
Well,
Hotel
because
per
they,
se.
right.
Because you don't have to have a
So-
hotel or to have a restaurant.
Which, as I understand it, is the majority or all that's used for employees. Right?
That is our intention for
Right.
the future.
So
Correct.
you need to have that use available, this, to.
Well, I'm
mill-
getting to a different direction. It's like, we have employee housing, a shortage out here as it is, and I don't know if this is something the planning board has to deal with. But, and I wanna do it immediately, because we're arguing over inn versus hotel when it's being used as employee housing, because we don't have a definition for dormitory. And this transcends into whether or not we're gonna have a restaurant or a farm stand to determine whether or not we have employee housing.
Yeah.
for Business.
Some of these uses are not permitted.
I
So-
understand.
So that's,
I understand. Why is employee housing considered a hotel or an inn? It's
Chris,
like, that's why I'm asking.
we're gonna table that discussion.
If I could just point out one thing also to what Chris brought up, and thank you for bringing up the fact that we did have a restaurant, so this is not something new. We had the food truck, which we could apply, we could acquire, we could have continued the food truck service that we had. We could apply and get a food truck license and continue a food truck. We felt that it was less effective or less of more visually beneficial and just better overall for our facilities to have the restaurant or have the farm store and to be able to meet the needs of our visitors and islanders who come visit our property, to have that within a building versus a food truck. So we are trying to reduce the impact to the neighborhood and overall property. But in doing so, we needed to apply for a restaurant to cover our services that we hope to do. And that's what led us to the 11 rooms for the mill building.
You can only have, a hotel is only allowed as an accessory used to a hotel in that zoning
Yeah.
district. So that's,
That's why.
Yeah.
So that takes care of that problem.
Can I just ask one question, Seth, would you
Yeah.
consider amending, if the planning board offered a favorable advisory at some point to amend zoning? And create language that a restaurant retail in combination with a farm use in the RCM would be permitted by whatever special use permit or permitted by right. I mean, it seems like it's.
I think that all sounds great, and I'd love for, you know, the town of New Shoreham to act on that and take care of that. But for us to sit idle and not to use our facilities when we already have a very short season to accomplish everything that we have, and being middle of May, and all of the visitors coming to Block Island within the next few weeks, and all of our staffing arriving, I would prefer not to wait for that judgment.
No, I'm saying like if this board approves your application, but they also make that recommendation to the town council so that you're defining that somehow in the zoning ordinance.
I think it makes sense, like
That makes
consider
sense for us. I think that's
agritourism,
that's
like,
not their
a
problem.
lot
That's
of
ours.
communities. Yeah. Yeah, I was saying, I think it is something the town, this application has raised this as a need, is that the town should consider like an agritourism and accessory uses on farms as an ordinance just for the entire island, not just RCM, not just make it something that is on the list of zoning amendments, as well as your dormitory. We'll try to bring that back as well, but certainly other communities in Rhode Island have that, and, I can provide some examples, but put that on the list of
Put that on the
amendments.
list for-
If I could add one more to that, if you could maybe
Yes.
add the verbiage of retail, would certainly help all of the commercial activity that is within the RCM, and all of the current hotels that are predominantly the entire RCM zone. Not being able to sell certain items or having that as a very gray area is difficult.
Yeah, I had a question about that, because in your memo, you say that retail is not a permitted use, but the purpose of the RCM zone is, I wrote it down, is to
Mhm.
provide for a variety of residential uses and retail / residential mixed uses. So. what
Right.
Yeah.
is that?
I love the discussion. I think this is a classic example where on the ground, what we're trying to do is incredibly clear and incredibly light touch, and then you add the regs on top and it's chaos. I think the great thing about that, and through Unified Development Review in particular, is instead of us bashing ourselves over the head trying to understand the regulations, this board has an opportunity to look at the project as a whole and try to consider what we're trying to do, and you can potentially vote to approve accordingly. But I really do want to make sure that I can respond to any concerns from the public. This is a really big opportunity
Okay,
for us.
Let's open it to the public for questions. No. So far, I don't see any hands up.
Maybe just to be clear on what property you would like to, you're talking about plat 7 lot 33. So just in case anyone has any comments.
Okay. Let's take a look at the mill house then, so we can move along on that. That was number 3, if I recall correctly. Is that right? Yeah,
I believe so, yes.
yeah. Mill building, yes. So if we definitely would approve a farm stand type restaurant. So you would be willing to take a look at the inn regulations for the mill property?
We wouldn't have an objection to having the unit count reduced. If this board wished to approve it in there, we would certainly comply. We have a draft. We have a designer that was willing to take a phone call from our client last night. And we have a design of the mill building, which is only 9 units. I can submit that to the board. That's what an inn would look like. If the board would be interested in that, I don't know that it's necessarily required that you have the exact layout in order to do an approval of an inn versus a hotel, because the dimensions don't apply to that, but I do have it, so. no sense
Okay,
not.
I think we want to have something to look at.
Oh, no, I think we already handed it out. You already have it? Oh, no.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, you did.
I mean, I know we won't get to final approval until next month, because you're gonna have to come back with the farm stand information.
Is there,
Since you're changing the usage hotel to inn, I assume it's going to have to be re-advertised.
I'm not sure about that. We're very happy to work with the community on that. I do think we could complete the Eureka today because we're not making any changes to that
Well,
application.
It's got kitchens, so that has a problem.
So there's a specific line which allows this board to exempt kitchens. If this board does not want to exempt kitchens, we would still accept an approval without that exemption.
Let's go, want to stick with the
Let's stick with
mill
one thing at a
building
time.
and work
I
through
think that-
this.
I think that gets
We're
people
going to
confused.
that, agenda. Okay.
This new or this-
Yes,
Yeah.
created
wanna
last
just-
night,
Could you describe, so it goes from 11 rooms
Yeah, I was
to
just gonna say.
9?
11,
You wanna
11 and 9.
walk
11 to
us
9,
through this?
correct.
This is the mill.
We've reduced 2 of the rooms and made those common areas, sitting areas to,
Okay, they're on the, okay, there's a living room, whoops.
So I think you're probably gonna need some time to review these documents that you're, just getting right now.
I mean, I understand that you would like this done today. I do appreciate where you're coming from, but I really think for safety, for everybody's comfort, we probably are going to want to look at some of this and re-advertise and vote affirmative next time around.
So another thing we've learned about the ordinance, so 240 square feet for a hotel room, but inn did not have
Doesn't-
that
does not have
dimension,
that
so you
requirement. We
don't
looked it
need
up
to
today.
review the plans for
an inn.
size.
Size.
Yeah, so it's really, you're approving the number of rooms
is
versus
just
having
for
to
our
look at the
information.
configuration
Yes.
of the size where the hotel, had that standard in 407, 408.
Yeah. this
The
one.
inn didn't have as many standards.
No.
It didn't have that requirement of room size.
Could you go through 408 and for inns and tell us how you meet all of those inns? Or you can do it at the next meeting if you would like,
So I think the submission meets all of the standards of 408 because we believe it meets all of the standards for 407. So when you actually reduce the requested relief and you no longer have to do the 240-foot restriction, square foot restriction, the structure it's an existing building. It's a little bit difficult for me to respond on the fly to section 408.
Just out of curiosity, why did you go with 9 rather than 10, which you're entitled to?
I want it to be under 10 so that there was no concerns.
I just thinking that employee housing is so difficult to find on Block Island that if you're entitled to 10, you might want to consider 10.
If this board would prefer 10, we will do 10.
Okay,
If this board would prefer 8, we would do 8.
Sorry, I'm just looking back. There was never a kitchen proposed for this, right?
There's a shared, right? and
Yeah,
that's
there's
in
a
the
shared.
plan. So,
shared,
Oh,
yeah,
okay, sorry.
which is fine.
Where is it?
It's right here.
Oh, I see it. I see it.
Right there,
Sorry.
right there in the middle. I have no problems with these plans. Any questions from the board? None? Okay. As I said, my only comment is if you're entitled to 10, you might want to look at having 10 rooms.
Very happy to do so.
Everybody else does, let's put it that way. Okay. So anybody else got questions on the mill before we go on? Nope, okay. Let's see. we've
so as
done-
far as standards then, the frontage. So I just want to make sure you're getting if this is considered an inn, if you're gonna move forward with an inn. So the zoning concern with this dimension of the rooms goes away. Frontage was another dimensional concern, 200 feet. Right now it's 125 feet, your frontage for the lot. So you still need that relief from frontage
So specific to the frontage, we consider all of this a portion of the complex. The complex as a whole has hundreds and hundreds of feet of frontage, both through the Eureka and Dodge House lots, the Kitterman lot, the Campbell lot, the 1661 across the street. Maybe potentially across the street wouldn't be relevant. But in terms of frontage and access, there is copious frontage associated with the complex.
Yes.
It does not say it's lot specific.
It is, it is.
It is,
And
but I see no
that's,
reason why we wouldn't be able to give you a waiver on that. I mean, the building is already there and it's been operating just fine for the last several years.
Is there a difference in frontage from its previous use to this use?
So for the hotel was 300, previous use, sorry, Chris, you mean
The,
current use or
The
the,
mill.
yeah, what was,
I would have to look at the light assembly definition or section to see what they,
So there's different frontage possibly?
there's different frontage depending on use, yes.
so the applicant can seek relief from that through this UDR. We discussed that, like, this is, the planning board can grant that relief
Right, there's-
under UDR.
Frontage for the farmhouse.
But it's not identified in the app.
But it
So
should,
you can't just start
Yeah.
throwing stuff into it without actually describing it in the application. And
well, that could be amended before before we come back to vote on this. Absolutely.
If I understand that this is a board finding that the complex does not include anything on an additional parcel? Is that what I'm understanding?
I understand that if you have individual parcels, we have to look at the individual parcels. It doesn't say it's a complex. It says that for zoning purposes that we have each has a different parcel with a different number.
If that's a finding of the board, we'll adjust accordingly.
I believe the rest of us, rest of people agree. Yeah. Heads are nodding, yes.
Thank you.
But as I said, I do not see that that is a problem for us to grant a waiver if you request it.
Thank you.
That one?
as long as they amend the app.
Yeah, they have to, yeah. I think when we get to several things, they're gonna have to amend, I expect. That's one of them. All right, we've looked at the garden lot, which was 4. Want to look at the hotel next, number 5. Eureka Hotel, lot 37, High Street, public hearing for a unified development review for an application by the Draper family for the Eureka for a special use permit under 407 hotels to renovate an existing structure to a hotel. Right. Want to talk a little bit about the hotel?
So specific to the Eureka,
Yes.
it's basically to continue to use it in essentially the same manner it's been used since, I think you said 1904.
I believe the building was built in the very early 1900s, 1905, 1903.
So one of the ways that we're looking to kind of continue the sort of natural growth and evolution of this family inn and hotel complex is to find any permitting regulations that we needed to meet and to meet those regulations. So the point of the administrative subdivision expanding the size of that lot was to meet the standards related to the hotel. Want to continue to use the Eureka as a hotel. There is the identification of kitchens. If this board wants us to remove kitchens, we will remove the stoves. We don't have an objection to that. We would prefer that we keep the kitchens. We intend to use those suites largely for employee housing. So instead of having a communal kitchen outside of the suite area, we think it's preferential for all involved that the kitchen remain. There's a specific section of section 407, which says that if you're within an existing structure, which this qualifies as, then this board has a power to exempt things like kitchens, room sizes, et cetera. So we are seeking an exemption from this board related to kitchens and room sizes because we're in an existing structure.
I disagree. I think that language is talking about dimensional standards. They're not talking about the kitchens. That's my interpretation of it.
I think if that was the position of the zoning officer, it would have been wonderful to have at some point in January when we submitted our application.
No.
Well, how would we know if you were gonna keep the kitchens, remove the kitchens, or turn them into a 513, which I think one may have been used for right now? So you
All right,
could.
The
you
board has
could-
not seen this until this past month, so we are going to have to work with what we've been given, which is this particular plan. And I have a concern about kitchens. We have had a number of hotels appear before the board over the last several years. We have denied kitchens to all of them. And I don't feel that we can treat you any differently than we've treated the other hotels, particularly the large corporations been before us with several of their hotels. So in my opinion, you are entitled to one kitchen and the rest of them are, need to have the kitchens removed, which means the stove or whatever the definition says.
Unless they converted the apartments into a 513, but they would have to be used for
Well,
year-round
that,
housing, so if you
No,
have
but
staff.
that's
that
gonna
you
be a
would like
problem
to
in
keep
that-
Here,
If it's in a commercial zone, Jen, do they have to be year round?
it's only New Harbor Commercial, Old Harbor Commercial and Service.
That it can be seasonal.
yeah.
Yeah, I mistakenly thinking it's commercial, told the applicant I
Yeah.
thought they could have
Yeah,
seasonal.
we saw an
that's-
application.
Yes, but
Yeah.
Jen,
Yeah.
it's an RCM zoning district and that doesn't apply, so it would require, if those were to be 513s currently, they're required to be year round, so. I mistakenly put that.
So there's,
This is an argument for Chris's point earlier, redoing our.
Well, that's why I was wondering, because we saw two previous applications that had this incorporated into their employee housing.
Five,
But
use it
because-
513.
513.
Yeah.
Because of it was 513.
Yep, the spring
But
house is one of them.
RCM,
Is, yes, it's
Right.
based on zoning. I know
Yeah.
some, when we were crafting those amendments, we talked about it being
Yeah.
tied to, should be tied to the use versus the zoning
Yeah.
district, so.
Right.
and density, because we increased the
Number
the
of.
density,
numbers, so
the
they-
numbers, yeah.
Add that to it for 513.
I just,
Or apply after, just so that the use is established. Cause it's the number of 513s that triggers the.
But in any event, the applicant's not looking to proceed with section 513 accessory
Right,
dwelling units
you're
for
not.
those,
No.
for that portion of the building anyway.
It doesn't work.
Probably, I would recommend it for you because I think if you want to have the option down the road of using that as a full-service hotel, you would not be wanting to have 513s in there, so that probably would not be something you'd want to look at. So, anyway, that's up to you. But anyway, before we could go ahead with this, we need to see plans that do not have the kitchens in them.
We would just request approval with the requirement that the stove be removed.
Like to look at the documents before we approve, just to make sure that they've all been done correctly. And looking at this here, you've talked about a number of rooms and so forth. When I counted, my total was different than 23 of yours. I came up with closer to 33. So I don't know whether I made a mistake, which is quite possible, or I did not realize that there were some of these other things there, or I missed something. But anyway, I came up with a higher number than 23.
It was, I believe that was depending if you were to include them as singles in the suite, kitchen, apartment, whatever you'd like
Okay,
to call
I
them.
mean-
The total count with the renovations would be 31 individual rooms
Okay,
and the 2 suites.
plus the 2 suites. So we come up with 33, okay? Questions from the board?
Comment about our zoning regulations.
I just have, a question regarding the denial to other establishments and having multiple kitchens. Was that based on new construction or existing buildings?
Both,
Both.
yeah.
And was there a volume or quantity that you took into consideration?
I think it's really, yeah.
The quantity, I was just curious if you took into consideration the quantity or number of individuals using the kitchen, you know, certainly 8 or 9 rooms could comfortably use one kitchen. When you're discussing 33, you know,
Yeah.
we currently are.
Actually-
Staff housing.
I would like to call my land use expert back. I believe the discussion of kitchens, we would like to put some evidence on the record relative to its standards because it's grandfathered.
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, obviously, everything we're trying to do here is cure some, you know, pre-existing conditions and dimensional nonconformities and uses, but I mean, the hotel has been operating with the kitchens, and I understand what the concern is. Somebody calls it a hotel and they're converting it to some other use because it's
Mhm.
got a full kitchen, you know, it becomes apartments, it becomes high rental, and, you know, there's no affordabilities, no employee housing, et cetera. Our intentions is not to go in that direction, and they're protected. So I'm wondering if it wouldn't be better, because as Seth has indicated, it really is, we're trying to create something that's so direly needed in this community, and that's employee housing. But as employee housing too, we're trying to give them some comfort and features like anybody else who's trying to survive here in the summer, you know? So would it be better to maybe impose as a condition tied to this, the capture of the kitchens, but they can only be utilized for certain uses? And if they go in a different direction, they'd have to come back and get the relief. Because it's not our intent, but because the kitchens are there, they've been operating since pre-zoning.
And you have the opportunity to create 513s accessory dwelling units for those units that you could rent to your employees if that's what you're doing. So why wouldn't you just go through that process? It's simple.
We can't do that because it's a requirement that they live there year round, and they do not.
You don't have any year-round employees that could live there.
Not the year round employees that would live there.
We're basically looking for approval to continue what we've been
Doing.
If we were to not even bring this application up and even modify the lot to conform with your zoning laws, we would just continue as is. We're
Right.
doing this out of to make sure that the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed, and we're abiding by
Yeah.
all the zoning.
Well, and you're doing
Well,
it because
we
you're
under-
moving lot lines.
This is clearly going
with the
back to what,
subdivision.
this is clearly going back to what's been the main discussion throughout this. There isn't appropriate zoning to address all these nuances, right?
Yeah.
And what came out of the New Rhode Island general laws, and it's affecting every community, this is all coming to light in every city and town, all 39 of them, including the one I work for. Things that you didn't really interpret of the nuances. We just did a nice little country tapas restaurant in Situate. And the only thing we could connect it to was a tavern. We're not a tavern, we're not a bar, but this is coming across the state. So obviously, I think to revise zoning regulations is very difficult. It's a lengthy iterative process. But I think you're gonna find that all these unique definitions of uses, you're gonna create much more, many more. But obviously, the difference between an accessory dwelling and housing for workforce, because it's seasonal, and short-term rentals, Airbnbs, I could go on, you know? I think under the unified and under the ability to put in certain things by special use, I think we can capture that by definition as a condition of approval. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we also have to look at, if we give you permission, what happens in 3 years from now? You decide you wanted to run it as a full-service hotel, and you still have the use of all those kitchens. So that would become a problem.
You'd be violating a condition. That's what I mean. That's why the board
Well-
has this board not only has such power under the GPR process, you've got all the power of the zoning board.
You have to use the microphone,
I'm
and
sorry. I said that's why the
you
unit.
have to comply with the zoning ordinance and your definitions, and if you can have kitchens or you can't, or farms or you can't, like, I mean, you still have to comply with those things.
Right.
So could we move on past this?
Bec- But the council attorney was correct. In your zoning regs, it already tells you if it's an existing structure, it's given you the authority to waive certain requirements. So they anticipated that there was going to be nuances in existing structures. That's why I'm saying I'm capturing it under your ordinance where you can impose a condition.
I'm interested in hearing
Can I
what our-
just, could I interject, please, on
Yes.
that? To Ed's point, and I get it, to the extent that these buildings do exist, just be careful. The zoning ordinance is set up such that a new structure is any structure that came into being after the ordinance was passed in, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, March 89? So to the extent any of these buildings were built after that date, they are a new structure and would need to comply. I get the grandfather argument, but you're also proposing a lot of new uses here. So to the extent you have a new use or you have a new structure, the kitchen, you would have to adhere to the prohibition on kitchens in the room.
So it's the existing, the kitchens are in an existing structure. It's a pre-1989 structure. It's not a distinct use as has been there presently. So this is, the Eureka is distinct from the mill on both accounts on that front. I appreciate the commentary from the solicitor. I agree with that analysis. I think that the kitchens in the Eureka would go a long way to support staff housing, and go a long way
Yeah,
to conform to the application and standards.
We're concerned about the zoning regulations, not so much the kitchens for the staff that are working there, because we all agree that it is housing is a problem. But I'm also concerned about what happens 5 years from now if you want to go to a full service hotel that is not serving your employees, and you still have all of those kitchens, and we have not done that for the other hotels. So
Dylan, when were the kitchens installed in that building, in the room?
When were the kitchens installed?
Yeah.
My family, we took it over in 1981, and they were existing when we took it over.
Dylan, you're not using this entire structure for employee housing, though you're in the process of renovating it to
Current,
use it as a hotel.
We are
correct?
applying for a hotel special use
Yes,
permit.
okay, so just, I wanted to,
if it gives the board comfort, we'd be willing, if we could put a contingency that if we were to turn these units or rooms with the kitchens, remove the kitchens if we, or when we switch to a nightly charge or of some kind of wording that way. If we were to remove the kitchens now, our staff housing and any use for the indefinite future would not have the use. And again, at 33 rooms, multiple, anywhere from 1 to 4 people in a room, that's a large amount of people to share one stove. So we'd like to continue as is. We understand that from a hotel rental nightly standpoint, if that's not something that the board would like to happen, if we could make a compromise or some kind of agreement where when we switched or started renting on a nightly, more of a hotel minded, even though it's a hotel approval, we'd be okay with that. But to submit plans without stoves next month, get approval, that means we'd have to remove it and our staff would no longer have that ability to cook.
Can I ask a question?
go ahead.
Karen, you said this use is not changing. It existed before 1989.
The building, so you've got the
Building.
structure and then you've got the use.
And what's the change in the use for this application?
So to
'Cause
the extent that,
it's-
in my opinion, to the extent that they're asking for a special use permit for a change in the use to a hotel, I think it triggers the fact that there's gotta be no kitchen, the prohibition on kitchen. Now, to, applicant's counsel's point, there's probably a way to condition this if the board sees, if the board feels so inclined, to either remove them at some point, no more kitchens allowed, but I do believe that asking for the special use permit, this is a new ballgame, and there's no kitchens allowed under these provisions of the ordinance.
and it's the administrative subdivision that's really triggering, I mean, they could just keep using this property as an excess or a non-conforming prior existing use, but the administrative subdivision is that's the biggest change.
I disagree. So I disagree with that
Okay.
because the only point of the administrative subdivision is to acquire the special use permit.
right? But if you're doing the administrative subdivision, you need to legalize the use. So you're trying to do that through the hotel section 407.
I mean, we won't do the administrative subdivision if the special use permits are not issued.
Right, I'm saying if you were not doing this, the administrative subdivision, you could just continue renting, using your property, the Eureka lot as it is.
And it would be non-conforming
And it
in
would
many
be
ways.
prior existing non-conforming, and that's,
We
right?
basically
That's-
applied so that we would try to be more conforming zoning wise, lot size,
Mm-hmm.
setbacks as much as possible, but also to have it documented in the town to with what we are actually doing, kind of just basically reconvene so we're on the same page essentially, that's what we're using the building for.
It's challenging if what we're being faced with is our effort to increase conformity is resulting in a decrease in uses relative to the status quo.
I don't disagree.
I don't disagree either. It's just, this is zoning.
Do we have the ability to do, as I think Seth was suggesting, condition?
Yeah,
Approval?
but, yeah, what, I was wondering how this would work, kind of what you said, that we allow the kitchens as long as you are using it for employee housing. At such point, when you start renting it by, I guess you'd say the day, for guests who are not employees, at that point, you would have to remove the kitchens.
Correct.
Is that possible, Karen? To put that,
Yeah, you can condition your approval.
how would the board feel about that kind of condition? That as long as it's employee housing, you can have kitchens that are there, not more, but the ones that are already there. But at some point, if you decide you're going to have guests that are staying overnight and pay, at that point, you would be a full service hotel and you would need to remove the kitchens, except for the one that you're entitled for.
Correct. Yeah, we would be willing to agree to that.
How does the board feel about that? Chris, how do you feel?
This is so wild that we have an application to come in conformity and I'm just,
We could make this.
so yes, I would make that concession and I think we're gonna have future discussions amongst us
Yeah.
on how to alleviate some of these employee housing snafus. Because this is what that is. This is employee housing. And this is just brought up this is the second time, I think, in this meeting, another issue when it comes to businesses trying to
Yes.
house their
I think
employees.
we've agreed that you keep this as employee housing with the kitchens. But when you change the use to a full service hotel.
Because I don't want to say shame on you for saying something, but shame on you for saying something like,
I know.
come
It would be nice to have the kitchens and stoves as an amenity to nightly rentals, but really this is a necessity to.
But we have not allowed it to other hotels, so we cannot allow it to you.
Correct.
Because it will come back to bite us in the butt and you're gonna get complaints also. None of us need that. So I think with that condition of keeping it as long as it's for employee housing, you could have your kitchens, and then when it becomes a full service hotel with definitions of what that is, when you rent overnight, you will keep you're entitled to one kitchen, the others must be removed. Okay, so that takes care of that. And I think we'll, if are any of the rooms undersized, if so, we could give you a waiver on that, because it's one of the original standing hotels.
The rooms are of varying sizes, so yes,
So we would give you a waiver on that one.
thank you.
Are there enough bathrooms? That was my other concern. There seemed to be a lot of single rooms, and I wanted to make sure there were indeed enough bathrooms so that whatever.
Yes, we have a minimum housing department inspects our facilities every year, so
Okay.
there is a full report there, but also our renovations basically are modifying the rooms to accommodate to bathrooms, private bathrooms per room.
Okay,
So that's our.
I just wanted to cover it. Nobody brought that up, and I thought, well, you need to know about that one. Okay, so the last thing we need to look at is number 6, which is,
I'm sorry, was there vote on that application?
We haven't voted on anything except the administrative subdivision,
Okay,
because one thing kind of,
sure. Thank you.
shall we say, impinges on the next. Okay, public hearing for Unified Development Review for an application by the Draper family for the Dodge House for a special use permit under 407 hotels to renovate an existing structure to a hotel. And again, we had the same problem of not reaching or meeting the definitions of hotels. So you want to talk about the Dodge House?
So the Dodge House is an existing structure. It would all of the same capacity to exempt would apply. Here again, hearing the board's concerns, this was identified in our meeting to schedule this meeting. And then again, in the report from the planning consultant earlier this week, we don't have an objection to the board requiring the existing conditions be maintained, which is 6 units. And that would be an inn, that would not be a hotel. That's sort of, I don't want to be repetitive. It's really sort of the same story for each of the lots. Yeah.
So you would reduce this down to 10 bedrooms or less?
Yes.
Okay, and go under the inn regulations. Which
Yes.
also gets rid of your room size problems and some other things.
Yes. We do have about 15 kitchens. No, I'm kidding.
But they're grand.
Oh, goodness. All right. Any questions from the board? Okay, any questions from the audience? Okay, for next time, we need from you the revised room plans, the revised kitchen regulations. Trying to say what? Yes, definition, thank you. Anything else that I can't think of? Allison, what have I forgotten?
So the farm stand definition.
The farm
we were
stand, thank you.
mentioning, the
Yes.
Farm stand,
You might as well, you might as well give the
I think we've reached a consensus.
Yes, I
Like,
think
I
we
think
have.
there's a lot of clarity on what comes next. I would love if we can describe it in the form of a vote so that I have a deliverable with an expectation next month, so that what doesn't happen is I come back next month and things are still a lot of consensus, but no clarity on definitive steps. The timeline matters for us
I understand.
considerably. So a motion to approve conditional upon us providing farm stand updated, and then we will provide all of that next month. And then if that doesn't meet your expectations, it doesn't, that's not an approval, because there's a condition on the approval.
I will make a motion that we give a conditional approval for the numbers, what is that, 3 through 6 on the Eureka Hotel, with certain conditions having to be met in order for it to take effect. And the conditions would be the farm stand, the kitchens,
Margie,
yes,
can you go, can we go 3, 4, 5, 6, each condition on each one of those?
sure. I
So
think we can do that
we're absolutely clear.
on each application. All right, help me out, guys.
So number 3 is the mill building.
Okay, for number 3,
Lot 33.
So lot 33 had,
that was the farm stand, right? Okay, so that would be the definition for a farm stand of items that can be sold, and a sentence or so at the end on what it cannot do. Under 4,
hold on one sec, the farm, and then you also wanted the mill is going to be a 10-room inn.
it's a
Yeah.
10
Yes.
room in.
That's the
But we already have those,
condition.
yeah.
yes, 10 room in. Number 4 is for the hearing where. That's got rid of the restaurant and the farm stand, so that ties in with that.
All right, can I just ask, are you just taking a consensus? Because right now you still have a public hearing open. So if you're taking a consensus to give them some direction and
What I
confidence
did
in
is I
what,
made a motion
okay,
and it would, for approval, but it will take effect only if these following conditions are met.
and Karen, this public hearing's still open.
Yeah,
So
I have not
are you,
closed it.
generally you close a public hearing and then take.
Yeah, but I thought.
I know, I
wasn't
think,
This is so confusing. I wasn't sure that it would go through. So yes, I know I normally do, and yes, I did not. So.
So, yeah, if you have a public hearing open, you should be taking public comment before you vote.
They asked already, but they need to close the hearing, but
Do I-
No, I would not. You don't have to close the hearing if you're, well, if you're voting, yeah, you should close the hearing. The problem is gonna be next month when it comes up. You're gonna have to have a whole new hearing with public comment and renotice.
and renoticed, Karen?
Yeah, if you're closing public hearing and you're moving, which means the matter would be disposed of. You're
So
gonna
would
keep
you-
it,
so-
and it would be a new matter with new notice on whatever matter it is the board will be taking
So
out.
to avoid that, could we continue it to a date certain and provide the applicant with, like you could do even a consensus of the members here, just so in
We don't have
favor, just so you don't have to, it doesn't hold you up to.
You could do that. I would just ask that the applicant consent to the additional time.
Yes. I mean, I'm just.
So I think we were about halfway through a motion for a conditional approval and then we got off track.
Public hearing, so I've got to.
Because the public hearing is still open.
I actually don't mind if you leave the public hearing open or close it. The conditional approval with our specific performance requirements are very important to us. We want to make sure we meet exactly what the standards of this board is. So it would be the applicant's request that we complete the motion that the chair had begun.
Okay, then I have to close the public hearing first, which means all the re-advertising, et cetera. So you do agree with that?
If we have to do that, we have to do that. I don't have an objection to that so long as we can complete the motion for a conditional approval and the description of the conditions.
And Dylan, you agree to any additional time?
Yes, oh, that's a good
Then the
point.
time?
If for some reason you cannot get all this material back to us next month, you do agree that if we need extra time, we could do it.
I would agree to
I
that.
think that you would still have to extend the time because you're getting close to it now with,
I-
right? Not. I think that
If it were up to
Karen,
me,
they
I would
need
go
to
ahead and
extend
continue
the
it.
time.
And with a
It did.
verbal guarantee from us that, that we were going to approve this, providing they meet certain conditions.
I'm concerned if they close the public hearing and you have to re-advertise, it's a month out. Like you have to provide the information and then we schedule it and it has to be advertised for 3 weeks. And I don't want to hold you up if that is a problem.
I think
Can I make a recommendation? I mean, let's continue to a date certain. The applicant clearly is agreeing to additional time, I believe, with the understanding that the public hearing will remain open. Additional information will be submitted. And the board is free to give feedback to the applicant on what it needs for next hearing.
so. I am not agreeing to additional time in the absence of a conditional approval. I am agreeing to additional time if a conditional approval occurs.
Okay, so if, so let's talk about that for a second. So if there is a conditional approval, that would mean that this matter would be, resolved, disposed of off the agenda. Which would mean that you would have to renotice, come back, and we'd have to have another public hearing, to finalize.
Right, like you,
Which probably means it's going to be July and not June. And I'm not sure, I really understood that you wanted to get through this as quickly as possible.
And I think the board has been pretty clear, Dylan. I think you know where this is headed. I don't know that a conditional, motion tonight is really going to get you the, the insurance policy you seem to be looking for. certainly coming back, continuing to a date certain, with providing the information with a list from the board of the things you need to submit should be enough.
Could I just ask a question regarding, two of the applications don't seem to be too big of an issue. The Eureka Hotel lot and the Dodge House. Is it possible to get those? A vote on those, and also could we get a vote on the mill building and leave the farm stand restaurant open for future discussion? Could we vote on 3 of the 4?
We could
remaining?
certainly vote because you provided drawings for us for the mill building. That one we could certainly vote on.
Didn't need them.
I'm not sure that we could vote on the others because we do not have drawings that show, for example, the Dodge House, how you would reconfigure that.
If it's an inn though, we don't need the drawings.
Right,
Well, you do, you need plans
You
that
need
you're
plans.
need the
approving.
plans.
Yes.
Okay.
the plans were
So we
submitted.
have plans for that.
I submitted the plans,
January.
submitted the plans, and then we updated the plans to reflect on our future renovation plan, which would bring us over the 11 rooms. But the original document submitted is the current existing and is the will be floor plan. Nothing's changing with the Dodge House. In the Eureka, seems the only thing of question is the kitchens. I believe that we had already.
There's no change to the plans. There's just a condition.
That's why I'm asking if we are able to get a vote and close basically 3 of the 4 applications.
I have, what plans do we have for the Dodge House? I don't remember.
You have floor plans for the Dodge House.
That show what?
Room.
With the 11 rooms.
That's,
hotel.
okay,
So
then that
with it-
will work.
No, so, with the inn, are you saying the lower level was where the new rooms would be? So that goes away?
Correct.
And then, so the first and second floor would remain,
What?
those are still current with,
Exactly.
It's
yeah, the
existing
is-
conditions. Yes.
so the most recent plan you submitted, you're just eliminating the lower level and proceeding. So there's
Correct.
still, like, 2 of the 3 pages are
Correct.
what you're
It'd
submitting.
be similar to the mill as far as just, I was hoping for a vote with the room count or, the understanding that it would be under 10 or under rooms.
Margie, in 25 years of covering zoning board meetings, this is not the proper procedure that they follow. You continue it to the next month. The applicants provide the documentation that you're requesting or suggesting, and then you close the public hearing, deliberate, and render your decision at that time, because right now it's kind of all over the place. And you have a full agenda with other applicants waiting, and you're trying to piece together something that seems unclear.
If
I believe it
if the
would be
board,
all these
So-
as an entirety.
if the board wishes to continue all the items,
Yes, I would like to continue all the items to June. And do you have the date for me?
It is June 12th.
Okay, June 12th. And you were going to provide for us.
Wait, could you put that in the form of a motion
Okay.
to continue, just so they don't have to re-advertise?
Fine.
Before we do that, Dylan, are you consenting to that?
no.
And I did not have a second to it.
So he's not consenting to that, Karen. I don't know. if
Just
you-
want that on the record.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, I did not have a second, so I don't need to withdraw my motion. I will make a motion to continue this hearing until June 12th. The items that we are particularly interested in having clarified is the farm stand, the kitchens in the Eureka, and the use as an inn for both the Mill House and the Dodge House.
And Margie, you're requesting plans, revised plans to show those changes, correct?
Yes, we do have the revised plans for the mill. He gave them to us today. And for the Dodge House, it would be just removing the basement if you wanted do that or redesigning it to go with 10, which your choice.
Thank you.
What about the kitchens? Are you having
yes.
them address that or no?
Yes, I did say the kitchen.
Okay, sorry, I
I
missed
did
that one.
say that.
Okay,
Yes.
With the condition.
all right.
With
Oh,
the conditions. Okay, do I have a second?
Second, I need to discuss though.
All right, further discussion.
All right, be clear on these conditions because as I see it, the mill is now an inn. We have plans in front of us. There's no condition there. There is, we're waiting, we need to develop, I don't know who, us, the applicant,
The applicant.
the applicant.
farm stand.
Yes.
What exactly do they need to provide?
They're selling, Margie had said earlier, what they're selling, what they're providing the public, as far as food preparation, just really defining that use, since we do not have a definition for that use. And right now we have a restaurant that's not a permitted use in that zone and a retail trade not a permitted use. So just define it is what,
Yeah.
Define what's going on there.
what,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah,
What,
okay.
what can be done with a farm stand? And then I want a paragraph at the end that lists things that cannot be done, so there will be no question about it. And I think the farm stand, your homegrown or locally grown is how you craft this as you go forward.
The state defines it so they can,
And you, and borrow language from somebody else, it's absolutely fine with me. I do not believe in reinventing the wheel every time.
and then the Eureka,
Conditional for the kitchens as long as it's employee housing.
and that has to be worded in such a manner, you're looking for wording.
I'm looking for wording.
Okay, we're not crafting the wording.
No, we are not. They are
Right.
doing.
Her
it.
Margie's motion is to continue the public hearing until June 12th, and at June 12th, you're expecting all, or prior to that meeting.
I want to make sure the applicant knows exactly what
Yep.
we're expecting.
Yes, that's.
Thank you.
And
Right?
we would also like it a couple days in advance so that if there are questions or comments, we have a chance to have a dialogue back and forth.
At least 7 days would be great.
7, yeah, would be wonderful.
So
Everyone
the,
has time to receive it.
so they need to provide wording for the conditional use of the Eureka with kitchens.
Exactly.
And then,
And with the removal of kitchens on the, if or when it becomes a full service hotel.
and then with the Dodge House, they just need to do nothing. They just have to give us floor plans of
Yeah,
first and
the-
second
the
floor.
Basement.
If they
is that
can
it?
either remove the basement
Okay.
plan or they can or you may redesign it, whatever you and your clients want to do.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you
Is
very much.
that clear?
It is.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Quick, before anybody changes their mind, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
It's a
thank
long
you,
day.
everybody, for sitting through that.
Thank you guys for all of your hard work. It is appreciated. Wow. Okay. Somebody may need to tell Gail that she can come back in.
Gail's recused on Bacon, and that's next, so
okay,
if
so she
you
can just
want
stay
to
out
jump,
there.
yep.
Okay, number 7. And by the way, thank you everybody for your patience. All right, this is for Cynthia and Charles Bacon, plat 18, West Side Road and Jane Lane, public hearing for an application for development plan review for a special use permit under sections 306E and 406 to construct a single-family dwelling and accessory residential dwelling, and this will be an advisory to the zoning board.
Good evening. Do I have to be sworn in or?
No, this is that is under the new regulations. You're under the old regulations. So
Okay.
You're fine.
Very good.
This is an advisory to the zoning board. They will swear you all in at the zoning board.
I'll look forward to that meeting. Okay, good evening. I'm Charlie Bacon, the applicant and owner requesting a special use permit under sections 306E and 406. Joining me is Chris Pakel of Pakel Architecture, our lead design architect, and Mark Butler of Matunic Design Group, who is handling all the landscape architecture on our project. Also on my team is Chris Delaney of Maple Hill and Ken Cole of Atlas Land Surveying. I mentioned this when we were last together, but my wife and I have been coming to Block Island since the 70s when we first started dating. Our 4 children vacationed here since they were very small. We now have 8 grandchildren. Number 9 is due in the next 48 hours. And many of them have vacationed here too. It was a dream of Cindy and mine to own a place here on the island, leading to a gift to our children and their children so they can continue to enjoy this beautiful place. About 8 years ago, we started looking for a house or a property to build on. Last June, we moved forward with the purchase of a beautiful piece of property on Jane Lane and West Side Road. This 5.4 acre lot includes 0.69 acres of conserved land donated by the late Jane Harrison. The lot also includes the Greenway Trail on the eastern boundary and Jane Lane on the western boundary. With the size of this lot, our site development will keep the natural barrier on both the trail and the lane, preserving the natural tree canopy for both. Following the closing of the purchase, we reached out to the Block Island Conservancy to discuss any concerns they may have with our project. We also met with some of our neighbors and discussed the project. I've also had a number of conversations and meetings with the zoning office. I also read the entire comprehensive plan, which I mentioned last get together. All of these actions were to understand what is important to the community here on the island and our neighbors. Cindy and I want to become part of the community, and this includes jumping in where we can to support the Block Island overall community. The total land use for the proposed structures is 2.65%, substantially under what the developable land calculation allows at 4%. The primary residence complies with all setbacks, is below the 2,000 square foot footprint requirements. Building planes are less than 75 feet. All planes are less than 45 feet, and we are in compliance with the height requirements. To summarize the special use permit request for the primary residential structure, number 1, the square footage exceeds the by rights 4,000 square feet by 137 square feet, or 3%. This is mainly due to finishing off a portion of the basement for the side walkout door on the eastern side that ties into the existing land's topography, allowing easy access to the garage located in the auxiliary structure from the primary residence stairs. We did include an elevator in the primary residence due to Cindy and I having concerns that age will eventually take its toll on us. This portion of the below-grade finished basement is 289 square feet. Without this finished basement area, we would be at 3,848 square feet and in full compliance. Again, this additional square footage is below grade. Number 2, the gross square footage exceeds the by right 5,000 square feet by 779 square feet. This is due to 1,667 square feet of basement area. Without the basement, we would be at 4,117 square feet below the by rights 5,000 square feet. This additional square footage is to allow us to install and maintain the mechanical and plumbing systems. Again, this square footage is all below grade. Number 3, cubic footage exceeds the by right 45,000 cubic feet by 11,531 cubic feet and below the mandatory limit of 65,000 cubic feet. The basement accounts for 9,092 cubic feet of this overage. Without the basement cubic footage, we are at our 2,439 cubic feet over the by rights 45,000, well below the prohibited upper limit of 65,000 cubic feet. Again, the majority of this cubic footage is below grade. The auxiliary structure is in full compliance with all ordinances. I should note from the April 10th session where our application and waivers were requested were reviewed by this board. And since then, the development checklist, items 5, 6, 7, and 8 have been complied with and drawings submitted. We submitted both site and landscape drawings on April 19th, produced by Atlas Land Surveying and Cole. And Matanook, I can't get that right, I'm so sorry. A design group, Mark Butler, and that addressed all the open items. We have one open item, and that is the emergency egress. And I've requested a meeting with Chief Hobbs to get that reviewed and hopefully approved. I'd like to address the May 3rd letter, a memo rather, of our submission from the town planner, Allison Ring. The open land matters, updated site drawings from Atlas Land Surveying, Ken Cole, dated April 11th, 2024, was submitted on April 19th, 2024. These drawings address all the soil and groundwater conditions and documenting suitability as required by Section 501A3. Drainage analysis documenting compliance with requirements of Section 501A4. Nutrient loading analysis documenting compliance with requirements Section 501A6. And an erosion control plan consistent with requirements 501A7. Number 2, landscape design, a full landscape set of drawings from Matanook Design Group, Mark Butler, dated April 18th, 2024, were submitted on April 19th, 2024. These drawings indicate our hardscape design and anticipated plantings. Number 3, stamped drawings. The final plans will be produced and stamped by Chris Delaney of Maple Hill Design, a Rhode Island-based architect. Number 4, roof pitches and shed dormers will be commented on by Chris Piquel, our lead design architect. Number 5, second floor deck. The small deck on the second floor is 174 square feet and is off the kitchen. It is only attached to one wall, but is incorporated into the northern porch's roof design. It is not a freestanding deck. We are asking that it be considered to be allowed to be constructed as is integral to the architecture and the flow of the house. Number 6, exterior lighting fixtures. All exterior lighting fixtures will be dark sky compliant, meeting the town's exterior lighting ordinance section 512. Number 7, for section 406, we have addressed all matters noticed in Allison Ring's memo, except the emergency access requirement. I have reached out to Chief Hobbs' office to schedule a review of our site design. This will be addressed and will comply with his requirements. I should note that the emergency access will be via Jane Lane, which also provides emergency access to all of our neighbors on Jane Lane. Number 8, for section 406B items, I will comment on each. A, view sheds. There are no ridge lines or open fields on our property. B, historic structures. There are no historic structures in the immediate vicinity of our property. Item C, maintaining natural grades. The natural grades are being maintained. We placed the structures to tie into the natural grades of the site. That is one of the reasons why we went over on our living square footage by 137 square feet. We're tying the auxiliary structure garage elevation with our walkout access to bring groceries and provisions into the primary residence. Item D, stone walls. There are existing interior stone walls that are in severe disrepair. The stone material will be reused as noted on the Matatuck landscape design plans as new stone walls erected in the traditional manner of the Block Island look along Jane Lane as one enters the driveway. The remaining walls in disrepair will be rebuilt in place over some period of time. Item E, natural screenings. As previously stated, we are maintaining a natural boundary along Jane Lane and the Greenway Trail. This includes maintaining the beautiful tree canopy. I would like to now introduce Chris Piquel, our lead design architect, to provide a brief overview of the project, the challenges of the project, and summarize the exterior finishes he has proposed. He will comment on the matters brought up by Allison Ring, the town planner. Following Chris, Mark Butler will provide a brief overview of the landscape design, which includes the types of plants to be proposed. Chris?
Hi, I'm Chris Piquel. I worked with Charlie on his house, how many years ago? 15 years ago back in New Jersey. And he kindly asked me to help him out with this house on Block Island, and I jumped at the chance. The design, we're trying to fit the house to the land, which is rolling and has a lot of topography. We're trying to capture the views and trying to accommodate Charlie's ever-growing family. And so it's trying to solve all those problems and then use a kind of a traditional New England by the sea vernacular architecture that picks up on Block Island. So traditional cedar shingles for the roof and for the siding, traditional white painted trim everywhere, traditional forms. The roof, we started with the design of the roof as 7 and 12 pitch per your ordinance. The gambrel roof form is similar to a lot of the mansard roofs that are around here, and there's some other gambrel roof houses also in the area. The septic was limited to 5 bedrooms, so we designed a 5-bedroom house. The bedrooms are distributed through the 2 different structures. The desire to capture the view led us to put the living, dining, and kitchen up on the top floor along with the master bedroom. So when Charlie and Cindy are here by themselves, they'll be living up on the upper floor of the main house. And then below that, there's a big family room. There's 2 offices, one for Charlie, one for Cindy. And there's other bedrooms and bunk rooms for the growing passel of grandchildren. The gambrel roof shape also allowed us to push a lot of the living space up to the top floor, but still make it feel like it's kind of a 1-story house with an attic up above, not make it kind of an overpowering 2-story walls that just continue all the way up. So a lot of the architectural character came out of trying to fit the program into the building in an appropriate manner. We're also trying to build this, although it's very traditional architecturally, we're trying to build this very modern in terms of sustainability. So in New Jersey, we're using an energy code, which is advanced 1 iteration beyond what's in force in Rhode Island. I'm sure that's coming for you soon enough. So this we built very, very highly insulated, all the energy. Charlie does heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. So he's an expert on this, and we'll be using, very high tech and very efficient systems for heating and cooling. So in many respects, the building will be very, very energy efficient and sustainable. That'll all be very modern.
Just comment on the deck.
On the deck. So the rendering was prepared from the approach to the house, which is from the south side. The other side here is the north side of the very small pond. So not in the 3D rendering, but on the elevation, we have a little bit of a roof deck up here, which I hate decks, I don't call it deck. It's a balcony. And there's a nice big porch that stretches all across the north face of the house, opening on a nice family room in the center and an office.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you really need to use the microphone. It's the
Sorry.
only way to,
I apologize. No, that's all right. I'm done pointing at drawings that you probably can't read there anyhow. So there's a nice porch that stretches all across the north facade, and 1/3 of that off the kitchen. We have a little bit of a balcony, and the railings will line up with the architecture of the first floor porch. So the lower columns will continue through a nice cornice line and go up. So I don't conceive of it as a freestanding deck. It's really integral to the roof, integral to the architecture of the house. So your ordinance says it should be encompassed by 2 walls. We weren't really aware of that until late in the day. So it's encompassed in the roof form of the house itself, and backs up to the kitchen. And we'd like to keep it there if we could.
We drove around today. They're private.
Right.
First is that.
I think that pretty much summarizes it.
And first
Yeah, unless there's any, yeah.
So. We had problems in back. That was not. So.
Yeah, and he's been involved as Charlie and Cindy and I have developed the design. He's been involved and will be picking up at this point and doing construction drawings and overseeing the construction, because he knows the locals, he knows the correct grade of cedar to use on the island and things like that. So his input's been invaluable. He should be here tonight, but he couldn't make it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Butler. I'm from the Tunic Design Group. I didn't know I was pronouncing it incorrectly all these years. So essentially, Chris touched on this a bit, but we're coming in, we have an existing grade, it kind of slopes off to the right. Worked with the team to get the elevations right so that those two ground floors would line up. Coming in off of Jane Lane, we're coming in, we're opening up a view to the main house. There's a driveway that goes off to the right to service the garage and the lower level, which coincides with the lower level where the entrance is in the main house. So there's a pass through here and comes in to the lower level. This upper floor or upper level really relates strongly to the main accessory unit or its main house. We have a oval driveway. It's going to be crushed stone going all the way down to service the garage. It's a fairly steep grade through there, so we put in some granite grade beams to kind of hold and stabilize that if there's any kind of a stormwater event. We want to open up this area on the side here because it is a large family and we're anticipating lots of activity. So we wanted one big leveled off area here. We feel that works really well because it catches up to an existing grade over on the eastern side of the property. Our septic is going in here, so we were able to transition that grade up. So it's a nice lawn area that feels it opens up to the east. As you come out this lower level, you go up some stairs that then bring us up to the back patio. The back patio is bluestone. It's got a fire pit built into it, a seating wall. You can kind of see where all the grass areas, that's what we're proposing to mow. There are some steeper slopes here, nothing egregious, but it is, the grading kind of stacks up there. We maintained a 1 to 6, which is totally sustainable as far as an erosion event. But then we wanted to support that with native species. So I'm not sure if you looked over the plant list, but it's all native species except for, we have one crabapple and we have some hydrangeas. Other than that, it's eastern red cedar and winterberry and inkberry and blueberry, bayberry, and the lights. Bluestone front walkway, steps coming down to the lower level. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, and we're putting in some new walls out in front, so we're going to reuse. So here's an existing stone wall that will be restacked. It's in fairly decent shape. It's overgrown as you kind of come off the sheet here to the south. And then some of the internal walls are kind of hard to see, but there's one coming through here and another one coming down through here. There's a ton of stone there that we can reuse. So we're going to propose to match the existing walls here and sort of line Jenny Lane and create an entrance there as you come in.
I ask a quick question. Sorry, how high is that retaining wall?
Which one?
Leading over to the grassy area that you mentioned?
Here?
No, the one between the house and that, it says retaining wall. Nope, the one that you're pointing to, yes.
This guy, yeah, that guy there.
This one here.
Yeah.
How high?
Um,
The steps going down?
Yeah, there's steps going down. So what do we have? We've got 4 steps.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a couple of feet.
How high can they be? Yeah.
Unless they're for.
There's just there's a rule about how high they can be without having some barrier to keep people from
Falling
falling
off.
off of them. So
And we're,
curious about that.
whether or not you need some sort of a planting bed in front of that to take care of that.
And there's I think there's a requirement of how high they can be too, which is I think what Jen's going to look, make sure.
We're proposing that wall actually is seating wall height on the inside there and then the drop off.
I found it.
So that is a barrier in and of
So,
itself.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
It says any retaining wall constructed of concrete, metal, fiberglass, or other similar manufactured material that is in excess of 5 feet in height or 15 feet in length, exclusive of a retaining wall associated with a walkout basement. So if that is not associated with
Walkout basement?
is it over 5 feet?
No.
Okay,
Good. Super.
is it, what about 15 feet in length?
It's 15, well, I mean, yeah, so it's about 15 feet, yeah.
So then.
Stone.
Concrete, metal, fiber.
And you propose this out of the natural stone for.
Yeah, that's all natural
Okay.
stone.
If it's not, then I think that's okay. Yeah, because we were concerned about the concrete ones where it's very solid, very high and very.
No, all these walls are gonna,
That's
you'll,
fine.
you'll find 1,000 examples of them all over.
It's good to check just to make sure
Sure.
better now than later.
Yep. Understood. Yeah.
Other questions? Anybody? Okay. Allison, you got any questions? Jen?
I just want to let you know that they are scheduled for public hearing at the end of this month. So if you, either way, unless you have additional information that you need from the applicant, I don't know if you're prepared to make a motion, but it would be, I'm sure, very helpful to the applicant because we did schedule it for that date.
I don't, I think your explanation on the deck is acceptable as far as I'm concerned. We are in the process of working on trying to define more clearly the decks. We found that this one doesn't always work, but the fact of the matter is you're under the rules that currently are in place. But I think since you've got it, the way you've explained it, I think that will be acceptable as far as we're concerned. Anybody else got questions or comments?
I don't.
No. Mary?
Yeah, just as long as you updated those numbers that weren't matching.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Correct that.
Great.
And I don't know what lighting you're going to put in, but I'm sure
You said.
you understand it has to be night sky compliant. We're very proud of that on Block Island, as I'm sure you all have heard many times and will continue to hear many times.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
And the other thing, just a quick thing, Allison pointed out that some of the architectural plans did not have the Rhode Island stamp on them, which is a minor detail, but we do have to have legally stamped plans. Other than that, you've addressed everything that I have on my list. Anybody else got questions?
How are you going to address the stamped plans, the need for having Rhode Island?
The applicant raised this,
Yeah,
you're gonna have them stamped. They're gonna have them stamped before zoning, is that what? or-
I don't, is Crystal Laney an architect? Well, normally they require you to submit those, but Chris is an architect. You're gonna get them stamped.
Yes.
So we'll leave it at that.
You will have them stamped. That's all we need to know. Okay, I will make a motion that we send a favorable advisory to the zoning board. Do I have a second?
Second.
Chris seconds. Any further questions or comments from the board or from the audience? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Nice presentation.
Thank you.
Kel, where you been?
Well, did you finish your book? Thank you for your patience, everybody. All right, number 8, Blue House Holdings, Eric and Jennifer Connolly, Plat 17, Beach Avenue, public hearing for an application for development plan review by Rob Sanders Architects for a special use permit under sections 307E, 406, and 703 for construction of an addition to an existing single-family dwelling, and we are doing an advisory for the zoning board.
Hello, good to see you all again. My name is Andrew Almeida with Rob Sanders Architects, representing Blue House Holding for 580 Beach Avenue. So again, based off of our last meeting, to give you a background of our site and what we plan to do, we're working at 580 Beach Avenue, pursuing a special use permit for overages on individual and maximum building footprint, total living area, total gross area, and total building volume, which I can get into those numbers in a bit, as well as our site plan development required for encroachment on the 50-foot wetland buffer. So background on the site, it's a 1.27 acre site located west of town on the south side of Beach Avenue, situated between Ocean Avenue and Center Road. Properties in the RB residential zone, resides in the flood zone X, not located in the coastal resource management or Rhode Island DEM critical resource area. Roughly 1/3 of the southern portion of the site is comprised of wetlands, whereas the northern 2/3 of the site is managed landscaped area. The property includes an existing 4-bedroom house comprised of 2 habitable floors with a building footprint of approximately 1,000 square feet and exterior wraparound porch constructed around 1887. Additionally, there's an existing detached cottage comprised of 2 floors with a garage at the ground floor level and a one-bedroom unit above with a building footprint of 620 square feet built in 2005. The existing garage cottage sits around 5.5 feet below the main house first floor, and the 4 living floors of the 2 structures do not align. So pursuant of the special use permit application is a proposal to construct a 2-story addition to connect the 2 structures without increasing any occupant load, providing adequate circulation for the new residents, and to accommodate a multi-aging generational family, and really combine the 2 structures. So the new addition connector will house a new entry, stair, gathering space on the first floor, and then renovated bedrooms at the second floor, as well as new finished basement space accessing the existing non-habitable rubble foundation of the historic 1887 house. So the new code compliance stairs will eliminate the use for the existing steep non-conforming stair, and is part of the reason why we require additional square footage and volume. And on top of that, given the location of the existing house and garage where they're currently placed and situated on site, just the delta and connecting them both laterally as well as vertically of the finished floor levels. So also included in the proposed work is an upgraded septic system meeting today's standards of a 1,500 gallon fiberglass tank connected to 12 flow diffusers on stone with an H20 load D box. The new septic system will replace the existing one, which is going on 20 years old now. The existing system will be disposed of properly, and serving both, the now one combined structure. So a little bit on the site side, the site development plan was produced by Ken Cole of Atlas Land Surveying as well. And existing wetlands were delineated by Ninigrit Environmental LLC in December of 2023. So the site plan uses a 75-foot wetland buffer required by the state of Rhode Island. But we also have delineated the 50-foot wetland buffer referenced by the new Shoreham development plan, in which we are encroaching on both of these. The proposed addition, along with the existing ADU, does encroach on these wetland buffers, but as seen in the site development plan produced by Atlas Surveying, we have what we believe is a comprehensive mitigation tactics of a vegetative screening, as well as the use of 3 individual dry wells to collect any roof surface runoff. During construction, we would use silt lining fence. We would be using the existing gravel driveway for site access. And overall, the proposed addition to this structure and connecting the 2 are all in the rear of the site. The site is not overly visible from the street. We are maintaining the existing historical facade and porch of the historical 1887 structure. And we believe that the work proposed here really does fit into the character, scale of the island, despite overages in which we are requiring a special use permit. If I may, referring to the memo that was sent on May 3rd, there's a chart in the back, which I would love to hand out a larger version of it, and providing the square footages for the gross area that was delineated as not provided. So if I could submit that, I would. I can get it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So like I mentioned, we are pursuing a special use permit for overages on individual and maximum building footprint, total living area, total gross area, and total building volume. And despite these overages, we do feel that the overall scale and character of the building still conforms to new Shoreham regulations. And I think what's quite telling of the square footages as well, we provided in our architectural drawings on the last sheet titled square foot diagrams. A lot of the square footage and volume numbers that are contributing to these overages are non-habitable spaces, such as unfinished attic space housing mechanical, or the existing rubble basement that is also non-habitable. Although we are adding square footage, I think, like I said, we're not increasing bedroom count, and we're not exceeding existing roof ridges. We're proposing using a traditional mansard gambrel roof to connect the two buildings, both for aesthetic purposes that are unique to the island, but also similar to the last applicant, using that upper roof structure and area for volume and for added circulation, navigating the two buildings and connecting them. So I think that's the overall project and how we see it, and I can take any specific questions or address any concerns as well.
Any questions? Go ahead. That's all right. You go ahead. I've been talking all morning, afternoon rather. Go ahead. Mine is more for a question for the board. Are we typically giving an advisory on properties that have not had their DEM site reviewed and a wetland setback? Because this is it's a substantial wetland and it's an important
Right.
wetland because it does feed to the Great Salt Pond, and it just seems peculiar to me that we could grant an advisory without them already reviewing the property and the impact that it could or may or may not have. So it's,
Sure.
I haven't been on the board long
if-
enough. I haven't seen an
yeah.
application like this yet.
Sure. If I could, I mean, from our knowledge, we reached out to Ken Cole of Atlas Land Surveying, who he said he's done many applications like this, and he's advised us that typically the special use permit is granted before going to DEM. But if that's not the case or the right sequence, we can go from there as well.
Typically, the applicants they can apply to DEM, and they often come to this board or the zoning board with advisories or sense from the DEM prior to the board's approving it. CRMC is different. CRMC requires local approval prior to the submittal of an application to them. So it's up to you. I mean,
Okay.
There's no increase in bedrooms.
Right, but it's the development period. It's
Yeah.
a substantial amount of square footage that is encroaching on the setback. And the other part of my,
it's not
Buffer, right? Not
wetland
building.
buffer.
it's a buffer. It's a buffer, okay. It's not the setback. And well, isn't it within the
Well,
50
It-
feet?
It's called the buffer or setback.
Right.
which, I mean,
Eh.
usually people say the setback, the
Okay.
wetland setback. It's not the side yard or front yard setbacks.
No, of course. I'm referring to the wetland.
Right.
And then my only part of this is, from my experience so far, we've had, I don't know if we've had to say no, but we haven't allowed this much square footage unless it existed prior to and or had a lot of acreage.
Okay.
We had granted one that had 4.6 acres and it had an existing house that was already 30 at 3,080 square feet and they were asking for 3,500. So I need to be convinced that it's something that is really necessary in this type of, this size of lot, in a location with such an important wetland that it is abutting or is part of.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and I would also like to note that, although we are over on a lot of the permitted special use permit square footages, we are under all the prohibited amounts. Like I said, no bedroom is being added or any I should say unnecessary square footage in a sense, because a lot of the square footage is attributed to circulation and not actual living space that is therefore increasing the occupant load. I think also it's important to mention that the work that's being proposed would be constructed in already maintained landscaped area. No trees would be cut down, no encroachment on any existing woodland area or and I think it's also important to note that the existing house and garage structure are already within the wetland buffer. So really any activity happening between those two buildings are kind of already in that area. We're just proposing to, connect the programs and functions of the two to, accommodate what we're after, so.
Okay, Allison, would you explain to us why you are recommending that we have this reviewed by the town engineer?
Well, the drainage, the wetland for one and the drainage, that was proposed. I just wasn't sure if he's looked at it yet, the proposed dry well, and just given the site, reviewing the drainage and if he had guidance on the wetlands. So the wetland, is it 75 feet is the required buffer? Is that like, what type of wetland is it? Cause I know the state law recent change on wetlands and the required buffers are based on the type of wetland. And so I didn't see if that was identified and.
I'm not sure the specific wetland, what type of wetland it is. I do have enlarged plans of the Atlas Land Surveying, if you guys would like that as well. I know that was a comment made last meeting as well. But from my understanding, the 75-foot was a state regulation, and in the site development application, only a 50-foot was stated. So we decided to show both, just to kind of give the whole story of, with the 50-foot, there is a lot less square footage in that buffer. Obviously 75-foot being more. I think the entirety of the proposed addition would be captured in that.
So did anyone who, you haven't had professional guidance yet on what the required state wetland buffer is? Is it, I'm not sure it's 75?
Like I said, from my understanding, and I'm not a, an engineer, the state was 75-foot, and what we could find in the New Shoreham was 50. So again, I think we thought it was important to show both to kind of show the whole story and understanding that the 75 is more stringent, but does capture a lot of the existing conditions that are already non-conforming.
Okay. Other questions?
Allison, you talking about, isn't there a requirement within a certain number of feet you need permissions? For instance, CRMC, I think there's buffer zones. And is there a requirement if you're within a certain number of feet of that buffer that you need to get approval? And what from CRMC and DEM, but
Well, the CRMC is around the water, so
Yeah.
But
This would be DEM. But they also review wetlands. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So
Okay.
Rhode Island
Depending on the size,
DEM,
depending on the definition. Yeah, okay.
the reason I'm asking is like, there's gotta be something that initiates it, not just based on, let's just say our win. Like, is there something that says, all right, if we're gonna be disturbing the soil within 50 feet of a buffer around a wetland, you have to get approval from DEM? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
This is within the jurisdictional area of
Right.
Rhode Island DEM, and the wetlands, the state law is, based on the required, setback, and the buffers is based on the type of wetland, and in some cases, the size of that. So that's why I was asking the app, like, what, I saw the 75 feet, and I didn't know if they had professional guidance on the type of wetland, if that had been identified, and
Right.
the required buffer based on state law. So Karen just, I saw her, I don't know if you want to weigh in.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So there are jurisdictional areas that are set out in state law, both for CRMC and DEM. And if you are doing work within those areas, you've got to get the proper approval. So it's incumbent on the applicant to get those. Not to say that the board could, you could condition your advisory on getting that approval. You could also say that, if you do get that, if the applicant gets that approval and it changes something of a usually substantial nature, they have to come back. So there are ways that you can protect, the planning board's purview.
Understood.
But you could also ask them to apply now, and you can also send this to the town engineer for review and keep this, table this until your next.
Yeah.
Continue it to a date certain, but till the next meeting. And if,
I think because of the wetlands, I think we do want to have the town engineer look at it.
Well, that's kind of my point, but also down the line, like, I mean, if this is a special use permit, and should it be part of our application that if you're within 75 feet of a wetland buffer, that you need approval from the EM as part of the application process?
well, they do need it. We don't have anything in zoning that says you have to have it before.
Okay.
It's a
or-
sequencing
I
thing.
mean, right, so, because like I said, CRMC is after the approval.
I mean, because not for
Can
nothing,
ask
I do
them
not
for
blame
it.
not going to DEM to get,
Right.
like, it's like, I understand that part. I don't want to go to DEM ever. But if I don't know, I just wanted to know if it was already stated somewhere that you, as part of the application process, and you're within the buffer, whatever that buffer may be, you need to get approval. That's
You do,
part of
but
the
you don't have to
application.
do it for.
Yeah,
us.
Right.
us.
Yes.
How many feet is it, like, how far into the buffer are you?
It is 37, I believe. So, yeah, 30.
The other thing to consider that is that you do have certain findings, in your ordinance to guide you. And to the extent that those findings involve environmental or DEM type issues, generally speaking, the applicant would submit that DEM approval to demonstrate conformance with that finding. So if you have other evidence to support that finding, okay. If you need that DEM approval because you don't have sufficient evidence to make that finding, you can say that as well.
Understood. Yeah, like I said, we were advised in that it was in a different order, but I completely understand where you all are coming from in terms of DM's concern on encroachment on the buffer, things like that.
Yeah, well, with that concern, and I think we do want to have the town engineer look at it
Right.
because you are in the buffer zone. So what do we do? Continue this until next month?
You would make a motion to continue it until June 12th.
Okay, then I will make a motion to continue it until June 12th, at which time we would like to go over the plan from the town engineer. And if you have any further information from DEM, we would certainly like to have that. Is there anything else the board would like to ask to be present for next month?
Just wonder if it would be helpful for them to go on Storyville's URI site and look at their vulnerability for that specific address. It might help the applicant.
Go on site, is that what? Okay.
Okay.
I couldn't pull it up, but maybe you can. It just collapsed. Couldn't- But
I'd also like to add just quickly to see what the board thinks about the size. I mean, I just did some quick math and you're within, this is an RB, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, so you're within what RB used to allow, but you've exceeded the special use. How does everyone feel about the size? I don't want to waste anyone's time. I don't want to have you come back and have done all your DEM and then us say, oh gosh, well, the house is too big. So do we want to address that now? Does anyone have any feelings? I'm just, that's my question.
yeah, I do. I was wondering what your feelings were, Allison.
Really, the planning board and zoning board, yeah, on the decision on
Yeah.
the scale. and-
How does this
Just the
compare
percentages don't matter,
to?
but-
I think it's helpful if there was, for me anyway, is the rendering, like I don't have it. I have
We can
plans.
provide those as well.
There's, just because
That's
a lot of the
helpful.
times. the
Yeah, I
visual
think,
On how it will look.
sure.
It's helpful when it comes to things like volume and size, like.
Sure.
Cause I look at the numbers and I'm like, like, I don't know.
Right. I think the numbers kind of tell a misleading story, in my opinion.
Because a lot of it, like proportional, where,
Right,
I mean, you're
and-
joining two buildings.
Right. We can,
Roof height, wall plans,
Right.
it all helps.
we can for sure provide the 3D renderings. I don't have those on hand now, but just quickly, if we wanted to look at the exterior elevations, although they're, flat 2D drawings, I do think if you look at the overall detailing of the, cornice lines, roof lines, roof pitches, materials even shown in, even window and aperture openings and site access, we're very clearly keeping the main front facade of the wraparound porch and the detailed dormers of the front facade of the main house. The secondary access point is using, traditional colonial paneling and cedar siding and again, the mansard roof with the,
I don't think we are having a problem with that. I think we
Right.
have a little bit of a large problem with you going into the wetlands. And I realize that joining the two buildings together, that is, creates a problem in that you have to work with where the buildings are located.
Right.
But if there's any way of shrinking it so that you're in the wetlands less or slightly less volume, as you look at stuff over the next month, share those ideas with us if they're already.
sure.
But I think that anything you can do to reduce the massness of sizes would be great, but certainly we've got to make sure that the engineer okays everything and that DEM, we'd like to know what they, even if it's just a preliminary thought from DEM, how they feel about the wetlands.
Sure.
I made a motion, but I don't have a second yet.
Which the second story is not-
Okay, I need a second for my motion.
Stairs.
They're just still discussing, they're still.
Okay, I make a motion that we continue the hearing until June 12th. And that we ask them to come back with material on CRMs, I'm sorry, from DEM on the setbacks, if there's anything that can be done to reduce the size of the house or the area. And we will also get a review of the site plan by the town engineer.
And 3D.
Oh, yes, thank you. And the 3D rendering. Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else that I forgot? Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second for Mary. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
That's what I think.
Yes.
Like, look at this.
Here.
Okay, last thing on the agenda for today.
Question.
And again, thank you for your patience.
What's in
This
here?
is the
This isn't a room.
Broussard,
Yeah.
Sally and Peter, Plat 18, Lot 42, Center Road, public hearing for an application for a development plan review for Nicholas Beatty and Melissa Bulbus for a special use permit under section 513D2A for an addition of an existing accessory dwelling unit, 513 for year-round residence. This is an advisory to the zoning board. Good, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're here for an addition for our 513 ADU. Our family is growing, so we need some more space. If you looked at the floor plans, you can see our living space is really in our kitchen, like our living room and our kitchen it's an open floor plan, but there's no room for a dining room table. Our living room is very small. There's only really couch space for 2 people, so it would be nice to be able to watch like a movie with our child or future children. So our addition is really a bump out on the side of our house that we'll be moving our kitchen there. So we can be able to have like the best use of our fireplace that will remain as it is existing. So we can have that in our living room, not in our kitchen. On the second floor of our addition will be the master bedroom and an unfinished storage space. Where our bedroom is now, we put our daughter in our bedroom and our bed is just in like our loft area on the second floor. There's no way to put really a wall up where the windows are existing over there or be able to have a bed of our size, like a king size bed. But at some point we would be able to put a wall up and there will be able to be like a twin bed or a crib for a child. So that's like down the line. We just need an adequate bedroom space for ourselves. And the unfinished storage space would be amazing because we don't have attic space. We had to, when it was originally built, we had to keep the roof level low, the roof height, to conform to the zoning ordinance. So we don't have an attic space. So with a child comes a lot of things. So that would be very beneficial to us. Our basement doesn't have storage. There is a wood stove down there, and a garage. So in that garage, Nick uses for his construction company, so we get no storage space in there.
Why not take the unfinished storage space on the second floor and make that into a bedroom? Certainly something you ought to think about, because you could go
no attic
through the
space.
nursery and go through.
Yeah,
Go
so there's
back.
no,
You know,
it would make a,
Down the road, only because we'd have to go to get the septic. The 3-bedroom,
Yeah.
2-bedroom, which we probably will do down the road.
yeah, just,
Yeah.
something to look at. That makes
Yeah.
perfectly good sense to me, so think about it.
yeah, down the road. So we would have to update our septic. We have a 2-bedroom septic
Okay,
currently.
That's
So we don't need an extra bedroom right now, but certainly down the line, we
down the
may
road.
come
Okay.
back. Or there is town sewer right at our neighbor's house. So if they extend that at some point, we may tie in and then be able to
Okay,
go that route too.
so clearly you have options. That's good. I think our biggest concern is that you are over the regulations that we have been using for 513 as far as size go.
Yeah.
Our number is what, is it 1,600? 15.
Yeah.
And you're asking for 1,792
Correct.
square feet, so what we have done with other application that came in not too long ago, we would word it in such a way to the zoning board that if they agree on the interpretation that it's more open-ended than what the planning board, thought, that we would give it a favorable advisory. If they interpreted it that it must be 1,500 feet, then we would give them an unfavorable advisory. It would be a way of kind of having our cake and eating it too, so to speak.
Yes.
So that's one option that we can do with you
Okay.
and still maintain our thoughts on the 1,500 square feet. Anybody else got questions or comments?
I,
sorry.
oh, go ahead.
No.
No, I think because their application came in prior to the change, that we should review it as according to what the rules were at the time. And I don't know if anyone remembers, I was never a fan of capping the square footage because I think it depends on the site and the acreage and the overall you know, everything that you should consider when we're considering all these special use permits, but I do believe we can readily grant this because they are within the time, or give a favorable advisory because of the timing of the application.
Yeah, but they're under the old rules, which is 1,500.
No, the new rules are 15. I mean, I shouldn't say no, but the new rules are 1,500.
Right, the ordinance that you.
The previous,
For Helterline and several other applications that they applied prior to.
okay.
There were no
The
max square
changes,
footage.
so.
Okay.
if
And I
that
think
ordinance-
we should.
Depends on how it's
reference-
interpreted, like Margie and I have the same, I read it as up to 1,500 square feet for a special use
Yeah.
permit, but then there was this language further down the
Oh.
ordinance, so that it does have the 15, up to 1,500 square feet, the ordinance.
It just allowed us,
There, well,
well.
It
it was
depends on
interpreted by the
interpretation.
zoning
Right.
board and the prior applicant
Which is
as
why I'm trying
allowing.
to cover both bases.
Mm.
It's
So the new ordinance would be a different.
different, but we're not talking about that.
The new ordinance, we wouldn't be able to consider it.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's entirely true because you do have language in there that's if it's an existing structure, so existing when, and does it, what if it's already a 513? Can you go to 1,800?
Mhm.
We're not gonna worry about that
That-
right
that-
now, but they are scheduled and advertised for a public hearing for May 22nd. So if, I'm just pointing that out in case you would like to render a decision or
I say that
motion.
I would recommend that we give it a advisory that if you interpret it over 1,500 feet is fine, that we give them favorable advisory. If you interpret it that it's 1,500, that we give them an unfavorable advisory because they are a couple hundred feet over. That way, zoning can make their own interpretation, which is what they've done before.
I would agree with that, and I think we should reference what the zoning board decided
With the last
with the last one.
case, just to remind them.
because I think
That's a
we
good
should
idea.
Follow what's
Yeah.
been done, I mean.
And why we're doing it.
And why we're doing it that way. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, I
Just
think
so
Allison
that
can
reference.
attach a comment on that. Is that okay with you, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't
Then.
agree with the 15 either.
For the record. I want the record.
For this particular case, so I made the motion, I do need a second.
Second.
Okay, any further comments? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries,
Thank
maybe.
you.
Thank you.
At least it carries. We'll let the zoning board
Yeah.
fight it out from there. And again, thank you for waiting. That
No,
was
thank
great.
you. Thanks.
It was a long wait.
Appreciate it.
Okay, all right, we need to look at dates for the special meeting, which will include 10, 11, 12, and 13 for anybody who is watching. It's accessory dwelling units, the section 406
Decks.
regarding decks, and technical review committee established membership.
And number one, we're gonna put number one back on that one.
No, approval of minutes.
No, but and number one, we're also adding to that. agenda.
Oh, and
right,
yes,
yes.
adding number one. We looked at that, but we'll look at all the suggestions.
So a few updates since my email about the special meeting. We would like Ashley Sweet to be able to attend the meeting, and she could attend May 16th, May 20th at noon, both days, daytime. So I don't know if that works for anyone.
So the 3 and 4 PM on the 16th. is
Does
that-
not-
He said daytime. I don't know if 3 o'clock is. Maybe. Okay, then we could say
Afternoon.
3 and, pardon?
So I was just echoing, yeah, afternoon is better for me, but I can.
Should we try 3?
Should we try for 3?
Okay.
What day was that?
May 16th?
May
Well,
16th?
either May 16th or May 20th.
Oh my God, you're killing me. 20th is way better.
No, one or the other. Sorry. I wasn't clear.
Yeah.
Let's
For
do
May
the,
20th, you only listed noon. Can you,
no, there's a bunch of meetings in this room.
okay.
So,
we can't do it on later than 12?
not on May 20th, on May
Okay.
16th,
May 20th, I think.
right? Or was it the, yes, May 16th, it was kind of wide open, but May 20th was not.
Won't be there.
Which one?
All right, Chris, what's your schedule? What works for you?
16 is the day before I open. I can.
Okay, so can you do the 20th?
Yeah, I can.
Mary, can you do the
20th.
20th? Okay, can you do the 20th? Okay, 20th at noon.
At noon?
If I can move it later.
If you could
For-
move it
So
later,
Claire,
great.
yeah, how late, Claire? What is like the best?
3 would be, probably be better. Or 4.
4 would be the best, but it's okay. I can do it.
Okay. I know we have HGC that night. I don't usually try to do back to back like that in case I need to jump into that meeting, but we
Don't make.
and plus
special-
they need this room.
Don't make special,
Okay.
noon is gonna be fine.
And I don't want to cut you off with time either, so
Yeah.
let me look and see if there's any other options.
No, I aim to get everybody out by 1:15. That's my goal and I. consider
I
it
don't
close
think
to
you
clock.
can get through these.
But I don't know. Couple things like the minutes and the, would be pretty quick. I don't know how much we'll have on decks to look at, because I don't think Allison's probably written it up yet.
No, I mean, I'm kind of waiting on that, the DPR, like where that all
Yeah,
falls,
that's
like
interesting.
in order to know where to locate. It's like, cause we're in the middle of redoing things, so where to put those standards, I'm kind of waiting to see where the other standards.
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
Yeah, so I said, the other option is we could continue that.
Yeah,
So talk to Jen about that. That might would get us out by 1:15.
yeah,
That's one other conversation.
related to the, the design for the
The
large
design,
house, right?
yeah.
Actually, I thought that application was brought up and interesting, but
Yeah.
of course, like having it on top of something that's architecturally cohesive, but then also having it in the rear of the house too,
Yeah.
makes a difference too.
Yes. There are a lot, I mean, a lot of things about that work.
Something there that.
But there are
we're
certain
talking about.
designs that you can't fit them in, they would work.
Mm-hmm.
Better deck balances.
Right.
There are a lot of factors. And that's one of the reasons we have it. It's not easy. That's why we-
But the length that we got was super long.
Are we putting decks on, I'm sorry,
That's too long.
are we putting the decks on that agenda or are we waiting until
June on that.
Why don't we do?
Cause
what
it's
you-
already next week. I don't
That,
think I
I
can-
still would like to get everybody out by 1:15.
So,
Okay, okay. All right, then, I will, anything else before I adjourn? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will get to know you better. All right, okay, I'll make a motion that the meeting be adjourned. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Don't anybody say no. Okay, motion carries. That was.